Chapter 1696. However, this could not be done in the 9 states. Although the 9 states had been promoted to a large realm for more than 10 years, many materials could not be produced in a short period of time. Lu Yi could not find suitable materials to make the scabbard. Perhaps he could go to the Jade Conch world to take a look? Although the Jade Conch world was not a top realm, it was still a large realm with a long history. The materials produced in the realm were not something the 9 states could compare to. If the 9 states was a wasteland that had just been cultivated, then the Jade Conch world was a piece of fertile land that had been cultivated for many years. The things that grew in the land were different. Moreover, Lu Yi also had the intention to go to the Jade Conch world. He had wanted to go to the Jade Conch world the last time he came back. However, at that time, his words did not carry much weight. It was better to let Wuxia do it. Now that he had promoted to Yu Yao, to a certain extent, the 9 states had the qualifications to be on par with the Qingli Dao world and the Jade Conch world. Moreover, the cultivators of the 3 realms at the 1,000 Elephant Sea lived in harmony and developed together. The momentum was good. Lu Yi felt that it was time to pay a visit to the boss of the galaxy. Now that he had returned by chance, Lu Yi planned to bring some people to the 1,000 Elephant Sea to strengthen the forces there. The 3-realm island was very big. There were 300 people in the 9 states and 100 each in the Jade Conch world and the Qingli Dao world. A total of 500 people could not maintain such a large territory. The little constellation hall had always been useful. The 3-realm island was now at least a middle-level spirit island. Later on, it would become a superior-level spirit island. The sooner he brought people there, the sooner he could strengthen the defenses of the 3-realm island. Although the Mermaid clan was the most reliable ally of the 3-realm island, he could not always rely on others. In the vast cultivation world, only self-improvement was true strength. He made up his mind. When he was done with the matters here, he would make a trip to the Jade Conch world. He could also make a trip to the Qingli Dao world and tell Wuxia about the situation in the 3-realm island so that he would not be worried. Without further thought, Lu Yi put away the Panshan saber and took out another item. White Moon Crystal. This item was used to improve the quality of the Dharma source and increase the efficiency of a cultivator's cultivation. Normally speaking, a newly advanced Yu Yao wouldn't need this kind of thing. Every new Yu Yao's cultivation source was basically enough to satisfy her cultivation needs. Only after her strength had improved would she need to upgrade the quality of her cultivation source. Lu Yi was different. If he did not have a talent tree and only relied on refining spirit jades to cultivate, his current source would definitely be enough. However, when he cultivated, he basically relied on the talent tree. His efficiency in refining spirit jades was not something that ordinary cultivators could compare with. Once the spiritual jades were refined and converted into spiritual energy, they would enter the body. Then, one's spiritual source would be required to convert it into magic power. If the quality of one's spiritual source was not high enough, it would naturally not be able to keep up with the requirements of cultivation. In the starry heavens, there were many things that could improve the quality of one's source of energy. The White Moon Crystal was only one of them. Its quality was not too good, but it was definitely not bad either. After all, it was something worth 10 or 20 million spirit jades. Refining this thing was very simple, just like refining spirit jades. Lu Yi sat upright and held the White Moon Crystal in one hand, carefully refining it. Very soon, he sensed that there was a warm feeling flowing through his body. That was the mysterious power contained in the White Moon Crystal. This kind of power was obviously fundamentally different from spiritual energy. The warm mystic power flowed into his spiritual source, like a drop of water falling into the sea. Very soon, it merged with his spiritual source, or rather, it was absorbed by his spiritual source. And during this process, the source of the technique was also undergoing slight changes. The external appearance of Lu Ye's spiritual source was a small flame. When the shape of this small flame changed, it was the time that his cultivation had a breakthrough. On the contrary, the quality of his spiritual source did not change the shape of the small flame. However, as the White Moon Crystal was refined, the small flame obviously became brighter. Several days later, the mystic power in the White Moon Crystal was completely consumed, and it became a useless rock. Lu Yi examined himself. His spiritual source was obviously much brighter than before. He was somewhat expectant, so he took out some spirit jades and urged the talent tree to refine them. Silently sensing, he discovered that with his current spiritual source, the efficiency of converting magic power was indeed a little faster than before. However, the speed was not much, only about 10%, which was still far from his requirements. But in the end, this was still a good start. From the looks of it, in the future, he still had to find some things that could improve the quality of his spiritual source. When the efficiency of his spiritual source conversion could keep up with his cultivation, then it would be perfect. However, Lu Yi felt that with the terrifying power of the talent tree, even if he upgraded his spiritual source to the highest quality, it would not be enough. He cultivated silently for a few days. On this day, Lu Yi was cultivating when he suddenly sensed that there was some strange movement outside. He hurriedly flashed out. Looking up, he saw a door open, and Hua Qianying's figure walked out from it. Since that day, Hua Qianying had returned to the flower world and had not shown herself for the past few days. According to her, there were some disturbances when the flower world was being settled, so she needed to go back and deal with it. Lu Yi did not disturb her. Since she had shown up now, it should be settled. However, Lu Yi saw that her expression seemed to be a little anxious. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi asked with concern. Hua Qianying was indeed a little anxious, and it was the kind of anxiety that came from being lost. She did not bother to be polite with Lu Yi and said bluntly, "Fellow Taoist, please come with me to the flower world." Lu Yi immediately felt that something big must have happened in the flower world. His expression became serious, and he stepped forward. Soon, he followed Hua Qianying into the flower world. As far as the eye could see, the flower world was still magnificent, like a fairyland, full of red and purple, competing with each other for beauty. The realm was peaceful and auspicious. In such a large realm, there were only more than 200 creatures living in it. Looking at the outside world, many precious and rare flowers and plants could be seen everywhere. Lu Yi was a little puzzled. The flower world seemed to be fine. He turned to look at Hua Qianying with a look of inquiry. Hua Qianying said, "Fellow Taoist, can't you feel that the flower world is different from before?" Lu Yi carefully sensed a little more and slowly shook his head. "I can't feel it." Hua Qianying said, "That's true. Fellow Taoist, you are not from this realm, so it is indeed difficult to sense it." "What happened?" Hua Qianying looked at him. "The flower world has given birth to a will." Lu Yi was stunned and even more puzzled. Isn't this a good thing? In theory, any realm could give birth to its own will of heaven and earth. Of course, according to the realm, the will of heaven and earth would be very different. The vast majority of wills that were born in domains were ignorant and did not possess any thoughts or concepts. They were more like the rules of a domain, unconsciously maintaining the operation of the domain. Such a will of heaven and earth was undoubtedly the lowest level of wills. A very small portion of realms, although still ignorant, had a certain degree of thinking, such as the blood refinement realm. The will of these realms was very repulsive to outsiders. Once they were noticed, a repulsive force would descend, such as heavenly thunder or something. The situation in the 9 states was more special. Little 9 was born from the combination of the will of heaven and earth of the 9 states and the vessel spirit of the Tianji compass. Although it often acted like a child in front of Lu Yi, it was undoubtedly the highest level of will of heaven and earth. Before Lu Yi, it had silently guarded the 9 states for tens of thousands of years. Without its secret protection and concealment, the existence of the 9 states would have been seen by the Qing Lidao world or the Yuluo realm. It's a good thing. Hua Qianying nodded. As a living creature born in the flower realm, the flower clan could clearly sense the changes in the flower realm. A few days ago, the flower realm suddenly gave birth to its own will of heaven and earth, which surprised Hua Qianying. Once the flower realm had its own will, it would have a huge impact on the development of the entire realm, especially since the flower realm was now attached to a realm like the 9 states. However, what puzzled her was that, not long after the birth of the flower realm's will of heaven and earth, she could not sense it. It was as if the flower realm's will of heaven and earth had suddenly disappeared into thin air. This made Hua Qianying panic. If the flower realm had not given birth to its will of heaven and earth, it would have been fine. However, now that the flower realm's will of heaven and earth had been born, it had mysteriously disappeared. Hua Qianying did not know what this meant. This matter concerned the entire flower realm. Hua Qianying studied it for several days but did not have a clue. She could only ask Lu Yi for help. In her opinion, Lu Yi had been in the Wanxiang Sea and now came to Yuyao. He was experienced and knowledgeable and might know something. How could Lu Yi know anything? He didn't notice anything different about the flower world. After thinking for a moment, he asked, "Do you think that there is anything wrong with the flower realm now?" Hua Qianying shook her head. "I haven't found anything yet." It could even be said that the flower realm had only been attached to the 9 states for a few days, but it had already tasted the benefits. In the past, the flower realm was attached to an extremely low-level realm and could not obtain any benefits from that realm. However, it was different now. The flower realm and the 9 states complemented each other and could grow rapidly. Their prospects were promising. However, there was now a problem with the flower realm's will of heaven and earth. This made Hua Qianying very anxious. Since there is nothing wrong, why don't we wait and see? Perhaps the flower realm's will of heaven and earth has fallen into a deep sleep? It's like a newborn child who is addicted to sleep, Lu Yi said casually. Is that so? Hua Qianying was deep in thought. Although she felt that Lu Ye's words were not quite right, she really did not have a solution at the moment. This kind of matter was not something that could be solved by being anxious. Moreover, I see that you can open the realm. This means that there is nothing wrong with the flower realm itself. If something uncontrollable really happens to this realm, I'm afraid that you won't be able to open the realm portal so easily. You have a point. Hua Qianying felt that Lu Yi was right. She could still open the realm portal at will and her connection with the flower realm had not weakened. It was just that she could not sense the flower realm's will of heaven and earth. Perhaps it was just as Lu Yi said. The flower realm's will of heaven and earth had just been born and was relatively weak. It was in a deep sleep. If that was the case, then she only needed to wait. End of chapter. Chapter 1697. After comforting Hua Qianying, Lu Yi returned to the verdant bamboo peak. He planned to cultivate here for a while and consolidate his cultivation. His previous breakthrough was a major breakthrough, but Lu Yi didn't have the time to cultivate, so he couldn't neglect consolidating his cultivation. He had spirit jades and hundreds of thousands of spirit crystals, which were more than enough for him to consolidate his cultivation. The following period was calm and peaceful. Lu Yi spent a total of 300,000 spirit jades to stabilize Yu Yao's cultivation. He didn't continue cultivating. If he really wanted to cultivate, returning to the Myriad Elephant Sea was the best choice. To him, cultivating with the help of spirit jades wasn't very efficient. He planned to go to the Jade Conch realm to see the Yu Yao of the Jade Conch realm and discuss with them before bringing some people to the Myriad Elephant Sea. This matter couldn't be delayed. However, if he really did that, he would have to spend a few years on the road. After all, he could save a lot of time by passing through the ancestral land of the Soul Tribe, but he couldn't bring a large group of constellations with him. Hence, Lu Yi was a little hesitant. He didn't know if he should do that. He didn't need to worry about the kingdom of the 9 states for the time being. The flower realm was attached, and with the addition of Mu He and the Black Umbrella, the defensive power of the kingdom of the 9 states had increased by quite a bit. Ma Shangxi definitely couldn't stay here. Without Lu Yi watching over her, the heavens were high and the emperor was far away. Who knew if this vampire would have any thoughts he shouldn't have? Little 9. Lu Yi called out softly. Before leaving, he still had to say goodbye to Little 9. However, it was strange. Ever since Little 9 suddenly left last time, it hadn't come looking for him. Lu Yi didn't know what Little 9 was busy with. Little 9 wasn't like this in the past. The space in front of him distorted, and Little 9 in the form of a large white rabbit suddenly appeared. I'm here. What are you busy with? Lu Yi asked casually. Hee hee. Little 9's smile was a little strange. Nothing, nothing. Lu Yi looked at it in confusion. He felt like something was wrong with Little 9. At this moment, behind little Nine's little head, an even smaller head suddenly popped out, and on that even smaller head, there was a little flower-shaped hat. Her skin was fair, as if carved from jade, and her small face had distinct facial features. Her large black eyes were filled with curiosity and ignorance as she timidly looked at Lu Yi. Her two small hands were grabbing little Nine's rabbit ears. Her body was hidden behind little Nine's head, making it hard to see her clearly. Lu Yi was stunned. After looking at the pair of eyes for a moment, Lu Yi asked in confusion, "What is this?" He had never seen such a creature before. What made Lu Yi even more curious was that he couldn't sense any aura of a living creature from the other party. Xiao Jiao's expression was clearly a little embarrassed as he explained to Lu Yi, "My new friend, Huan Yang." New friends? Lu Yi was confused. Little Jiao actually made friends? One had to know that in the 10,000 years of protection of the 9 provinces, only Lu Yi himself and the city lord of the celestial origin city knew of little Nine's existence. The others, even Feng Wujiang, only had some suspicions and had never truly seen little Nine. Little Nine actually made a new friend in the 9 prefectures? Lu Yi couldn't even tell what race this Huan Yang belonged to. "Huan Yang, he's Lu Yi, the one I told you about. Don't be afraid, he's a good person," Little Nine said to Huan Yang. Huan Yang then stood up straight. But even if she stood up straight, she was only a few inches tall. She was obviously hiding behind little Nine's head just now. Huan Yang was wearing a hat that looked like a blooming flower on her head and a green skirt on her body. However, rather than saying that it was a skirt, it was better to say that it was a combination of leaves. However, it looked seamless and fit her body very well. Even Huan Yang's slim waist was outlined. Huan Yang opened her mouth and made a sound. She didn't seem to know how to speak. However, Lu Yi felt that she should be greeting him, so he nodded at her. Lu Yi looked curious and was about to ask where little Nine made this new friend. Suddenly, he looked at Huan Yang seriously and then looked at little Nine. His eyes moved back and forth between Huan Yang and little Nine several times. The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. Squeezing out a harmless smile, Lu Yi said, "Huan Yang, I want to talk to little Nine about something. You go play first." Huan Yang tilted her head and looked at Lu Yi with a pair of ignorant eyes. Little Nine shook his body and said, "You wait for me on the side." Huan Yang obediently climbed down from little Nine's body. Her movement was very difficult. When she fell to the ground, she accidentally fell, which made Lu Ye's eyelids jump. After Huan Yang came down, Lu Yi picked up little Nine and turned around to enter the bamboo house. "What's wrong?" Little Nine saw Lu Ye's sneaky appearance, as if he couldn't see anyone, and was somewhat at a loss. Lu Yi squatted down and looked at him with a serious expression. "You tell me honestly, your new friend, where did she come from?" Little Nine rolled his eyes. "I picked her up." Fart. Lu Yi raised his hand and pointed at his head. "Do you really think I can't see anything? Huan Yang has an aura similar to yours." At first, Lu Yi didn't see anything and was still guessing what race Huan Yang came from. His experience was not shallow now, but he had never seen a race like Huan Yang. Until he suddenly noticed that Huan Yang had an aura similar to little Nine's. Hee. Little Nine smiled awkwardly. "You already know, why are you still asking?" "Really?" Lu Yi was stunned. Even if he had guessed it, when little Nine admitted it, he still couldn't believe it. Huan Yang is the will of the flower world? And that's right. Little Nine readily admitted. Lu Ye's heart trembled. For a moment he didn't know what to say. The truth was out. A few days ago, Hua Qianying came to him to ask about the will of the flower world. She said she couldn't feel the existence of the will of the flower world. Lu Yi naturally thought that the will of the flower world had just been born and had fallen asleep, so Hua Qianying couldn't feel it. But in fact, this was not the case at all. Not only did the flower world give birth to the will of the flower world, but it was also the same as little Nine, giving birth to an extremely high-level will of the flower world. With Huan Yang by little Nine's side, it would be strange if Hua Qianying could feel it in the flower world. "Do you know that this is abduction?" Lu Yi looked at little Nine speechlessly. "This child has just been born and you already abducted her out of the house. How can you do this? Her parents are very worried." Little Nine felt wronged. How could that be? I helped Huan Yang's birth, so she is very close to me. I am preparing to send her back to the flower world after a period of time. Lu Yi looked at him from the corner of his eyes. How long is a period of time? Little Nine stammered. AI. Lu Yi sighed. He didn't have the heart to scold him too much. Little Nine had always been alone until he appeared. Only then did he have someone to talk to, but ever since he left the 9 regions, he had become alone again. Now Huan Yang had appeared, and in essence, she was an existence of the same nature as Little Nine. The World King Flower was attached to the 9 regions, so there was a natural closeness between them. For a will that had been alone for tens of thousands of years, the sudden appearance of such a companion naturally made it more cherished. Recently, Little Nine had disappeared without a trace. Lu Yi thought it was because he noticed that he was cultivating and didn't come to disturb him. It turned out that he had a new friend. This guy liked the new and forgot the old. What do you mean by you helped Huan Yang's birth? Lu Yi asked again. Little Nine quickly explained. The World King Flower was placed in the 9 regions and attached to the 9 regions. In the process of fusing with each other, the World King Flower undoubtedly obtained some benefits, and these benefits promoted the birth of the will of the flower world. If there was no external interference, then the will of the world born in the flower world would only be the most basic will of the world. It wouldn't have its own thoughts, and it wouldn't be able to take form. But at that time, when the will of the flower world was about to be born, Little Nine sensed it and secretly gave it a push. With this push, Huan Yang was born. In this process, Little Nine exerted a lot of effort, and it also caused a lot of damage to the foundation of the 9 regions. Therefore, the birth of Huan Yang was not an inevitable result. It was basically Little Nine's credit. As a result, after the birth, Huan Yang naturally had a great sense of intimacy with Little Nine. In recent days, the 2 wills of the world had been together. The snacks that Lu Yi brought back for Little Nine were all given to Huan Yang by Little Nine. After Lu Yi heard this, he couldn't help but smile with joy. For some reason, he felt as if his mischievous brat had kidnapped a beautiful young lady from the outside. Although he felt a little sorry for the girl, the rice had already been cooked. Speaking of which, Little Jiao, are you a male or a female? Lu Yi asked as she reached out to examine Little Jiao. Little Nine dodged in embarrassment and said shyly, I am the combination of the will of the world and the artifact spirit. How can there be a male or female? That's true, whether it was Little Nine or Huan Yang, they were both abnormal creatures. There really wasn't any distinction between male and female. Although Huan Yang looked like a little girl, it was just an external image. There's no need for you to be so sneaky. Just tell me directly. Lu Yi said again. The birth of Huan Yang was not a bad thing. Hua Qianying would definitely be very happy if she knew. Now that she couldn't perceive the will of the world of the flower world, she probably wouldn't be able to sleep and eat well these days. I'm not sneaky. Little Nine was still stubborn. Forget it. My child was just born and you took her away. Now you have to return her. Little Nine seemed a little unhappy. Fool. Lu Yi rubbed his head. The flower world is attached to the 9 regions. You and Huan Yang can meet whenever you want. The flower clan can't stop you. What are you afraid of? In this small piece of land, there's no other will of the world that can snatch your love. What do you mean snatch my love? Little Nine tried to defend himself, his rabbit face turning red. Lu Yi chuckled. This was also good. When he was outside, he had always been thinking about Little Nine. Now that there was Huan Yang, Little Nine would not be lonely in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 1698. In the flower world, Little Nine was lying quietly on the side. Huan Yang was sitting on Little Nine's body just like what Lu Yi saw just now. She grabbed Little Nine's rabbit ears with her 2 small hands and looked around timidly. Lu Yi stood aside and talked to Hua Qianying in detail. The tall Mu He and Black Umbrella looked at Little Nine and Huan Yang with relish. That's the situation. Lu Yi looked helpless. I only found out today. Fellow Taoist Hua, I'm really sorry to have caused you trouble. When Lu Yi spoke, Hua Qianying's eyes never left the little Huan Yang. Her eyes were shining. Hearing this, she quickly said, "Fellow Taoist, you're too serious. You didn't know about what happened before. Moreover, the birth of Huanyang was greatly aided by the will of your world. Speaking of which, this is Huanyang's opportunity and also our flower race's opportunity. We should thank you. The highest level of will of the world. There weren't many in the entire starry sky, but now there were two in front of her, and one of them was from the flower world." Hua Qianying's mood was surging. She increasingly felt that it was a wise decision to let the world king flower attach to 9 regions. She bent down, stretched out her hand to Huanyang, and called softly, "Huanyang." Huanyang still looked timid. She looked at her cautiously, but she didn't mean to pay attention to her. Instead, her 2 small hands grabbed the rabbit ears even tighter. Lu Yi clearly felt that little Nine was a little proud and couldn't help but kick it. Little Nine shook its body and said, "Go, it's okay." Huanyang let go of the rabbit ears, lifted her little skirt with both hands, and stood on Hua Qianying's hand. Hua Qianying was not happy. Instead, she felt a little sad. Her own will of the world was not close to her. Instead, it obeyed the will of the world of another family. How could this be? But in any case, the birth of a will of the world like Huanyang was a great thing. Hua Qianying could already foresee the beautiful future of the flower world. "You guys talk, I'll go first," Lu Yi said, grabbed little Nine, and returned to 9 regions through the portal. In the bamboo house, Lu Yi looked at little Nine and said, "I'm going to Jade's snail. Take care of 9 regions. Don't just focus on little Huanyang." Little Nine's rabbit ears drooped as it said listlessly, "Got it." He looked like a young man who had been separated by a stick. Lu Yi couldn't help but laugh. "The future is long. Why are you in such a hurry? Moreover, Huanyang is still so young, you should raise her a little. As long as Jiuzhou and the flower world are not separated, you two will never be separated." The rabbit's ears perked up again. Little Nine's spirit was aroused. "You're right." Lu Yi rubbed its head and couldn't help but fall into deep contemplation. Should I bring people to the myriad ocean? With his previous experience, this trip would definitely be easier than the previous one. Furthermore, his cultivation had already reached Yuyao, so his ability to deal with danger was much stronger than before. Other things aside, the risk of passing through the chaotic explosion zone was definitely lower than the previous time. However, this journey would take several years, so it would take some time. After thinking about it for a long time, Lu Yi decided to bring some people over. After he brought people to the 10,000 Elephant Sea last time, the constellations that stayed behind in the 9 prefectures were eagerly waiting for him. It was not easy for him to make a trip back, so it would be unreasonable if he did not bring some people over. It would be a few years, so it would be a good time to cultivate on the road. After making up his mind, Lu Yi spread out his divine sense and sent a message to the Guardian Hall. Soon, Guardian Zhang Yuan's side started to act, and news spread everywhere. In just a few days, the candidates for the 300 constellations were confirmed. They gathered at the Guardian Hall and waited excitedly. Last time, 300 people went to the 9 prefectures. This time, Lu Yi decided to bring another 300 people over. As for how many people the Qing Lidao world and Yuluo would send, Lu Yi did not care. It would depend on Wuzhua and Yuluo's Yuyao. Of course, too many people would not do. Although the 3-world island was big, there was a limit. Furthermore, the 3-world island had just been established, so its financial resources were limited. If too many people went, the demand for cultivation would increase. Everything was ready. Just as Lu Yi was about to leave for the Guardian Hall, Little Nine suddenly came to find him. Lu Yi, are you leaving?" Little Nine naturally knew about the movements in the 9 prefectures in the past few days. "I'm leaving. Take good care of the 9 prefectures." Lu Yi nodded. The last time he left, he was still a little worried about Little Nine. This time, there was no need. With Huanyang around, Little Nine would never be lonely. Little Nine said, "Wait, come with me to the flower world." "What's the matter?" "You'll know when you get there." As soon as Little Nine finished speaking, a door appeared in front of them. It was obviously opened by Huanyang. Little Nine took the lead and went in. Lu Yi followed closely behind. In the flower world, Lu Yi appeared. Hua Qianying immediately rushed over. The little Huanyang sat on her shoulder, swinging her legs leisurely. After a few days of getting along, Huanyang and Hua Qianying were familiar with each other. What's more, Hua Qianying was the first living creature born in this flower world. They also had a natural closeness. After Lu Yi greeted Hua Qianying asked, "What are you doing?" Lu Yi shook his head. "Little Nine asked me to come." Hua Qianying said, "Huanyang asked me to come." The two looked at each other, not knowing what the two little guys were up to. Little Nine jumped up and sat on Lu Ye's shoulder like Huanyang. She said, "Huanyang wants to give you a gift." Lu Yi was surprised. "Huanyang wants to give me a gift?" This was something to look forward to. Little Nine looked at Huanyang. "Let's start." Huanyang's body floated up from Hua Qianying's shoulder, then came to Lu Ye's side and circled around him. She then stuck to his hanging arm and softly said, "Ah. Roll up your sleeves." Little Nine said, conveying Huanyang's meaning. Lu Yi laughed and rolled up his sleeves. He wanted to see what the little Huanyang wanted to give him. Huanyang raised her two small hands and pressed them on Lu Ye's arm. The next moment, Huanyang's body emitted a green light and the flower world shook. Hua Qianying's face changed. She immediately noticed that the flower world's foundation was being consumed at a crazy rate. Little Huanyang cried again, and the flower world shook even more. Lu Ye's expression also became solemn. Little Nine said that Huanyang wanted to give him a gift, but he didn't take it seriously. Even if Huanyang was the manifestation of the flower world's will, the flower world was only a large realm. Therefore, Lu Yi thought that Huanyang's gift wouldn't be too valuable. But now, this scene made him understand that this gift might be somewhat extraordinary. With the flower world shaking and a large amount of foundation being consumed, Lu Yi clearly felt that there was something on his arm. Carefully sensing it, his expression shook. A moment later, Huanyang flew back to Hua Qianying's side, panting. Hua Qianying held her in the palm of her hand. Her small face was pale, and it seemed that she had consumed a lot of foundation. Although Hua Qianying knew that this was caused by the flower world's foundation being consumed too much, and that Huanyang was actually fine, she couldn't help but worry. But in the next moment, the flower world shook again. Hua Qianying was shocked to discover that the foundation of the flower world was rapidly being replenished. She quickly looked at Little Nine and saw that Little Nine had closed his eyes, and there was a strange power fluctuating around his body. This was obviously Little Nine using the foundation of the 9 provinces to make up for the flower world's loss. In this way, although the foundation of the 9 provinces would be consumed, it would be much easier for the 9 provinces to replenish it than the flower world. At this moment, Lu Yi was looking down at his arm. There was a flower-like tattoo on his arm. The appearance of the flower was exactly the same as the World King flower. Carefully sensing it, he found that the inside of the tattoo was actually a space. A small world. Lu Yi immediately understood what the essence of the tattoo was. It was actually a small world. When he first obtained the flower world, the World King flower was placed on top of the 7-colored divine lotus. In that state, the flower world was actually a small world because even a late-stage Yuyao like Ma Shangxi could be stored inside. Of course, in comparison, the flower world he had now could only be regarded as a small flower world. It was completely incomparable to the real flower world in terms of size. Lu Yi quickly realized that this small flower world could hold a lot of people, but the number was not fixed. It was related to one's cultivation. The higher one's cultivation, the fewer people it could hold, and vice versa. As for how many people it could hold, he still needed to test it. Little Nine had just asked him if he was going to leave the 9 provinces, and now he brought Huanyang to give him such a big gift. It was obvious that he had long planned this. Lu Yi really didn't know that Huanyang had such an ability. Looking at Hua Qianying's expression, she obviously didn't know either. However, Little Nine had been with Huanyang for a period of time recently, so his understanding of Huanyang was undoubtedly incomparable to others. Lu Yi understood that although this gift was made by Huanyang, it was absolutely impossible that Little Nine didn't secretly instigate it. Such a big gift could be said to have come at the right time. With such a small world, he could store the constellations in the 9 provinces and use the soul race's ancestral land to rush to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, saving a lot of time. Lu Yi raised his head and asked Hua Qianying, "Is Huan Yang all right?" Hua Qianying shook her head. "It's nothing serious. The flower world's lost foundation has been recovered." "That's good." Lu Yi nodded. If the flower world suffered any losses because of this gift, Lu Yi would really feel apologetic. However, Little Nine was still very reliable. "Fellow Taoist Hua, I plan to return to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Does fellow Taoist want to come with me?" Lu Yi asked. If Hua Qianying could come with him to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he would have more leeway in alchemy. Currently, the 3-world island only refined treasure body pills and spirit refining pills. Moreover, they were refined with the help of the pill gourd. However, cultivators didn't need these 2 kinds of spirit pills for cultivation. Moreover, the number of spirit pills refined from the pill gourd was limited. He had to sell them to the mermaid clan and also for his own people to cultivate. Currently, he could satisfy his needs, but once he brought more to the 3-world island, he might not be able to satisfy his needs. If Hua Qianying could go, she would definitely be able to cultivate a large number of outstanding alchemists for the 3-world island, which would be beneficial for the future. End of chapter. Chapter 1699. Hua Qianying thought for a moment and shook her head. "I won't go for now. The flower world has just settled down, and Huan Yang has just been born. I want to stay here for a while. We'll talk about it later." "All right, then I'll have to trouble you to take care of the 9 states." After leaving the flower world with Little Nine, Lu Yi hugged it and rubbed it. "Well done." "Hee hee." Little Nine smiled proudly. "Now you won't have to spend so much time on the road." Little Nine knew the route from the 9 states to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Lu Yi had told it about the details, so after learning about Huan Yang's ability, Little Nine was tempted. Lu Yi was now Yu Yao, and he had a blood servant, Ma Shangxi. With just the 2 of them, the time it would take to travel was much faster and more convenient than carrying a group of constellations. Without mentioning anything else, just passing through the chaotic explosion zone would reduce the risk to the minimum. Huan Yang was naturally obedient to Little Nine. Thus, under Little Nine's urging, Lu Yi received the Little Flower World as a gift. However, Little Nine didn't know that its and Huan Yang's actions this time would be of greater help than it expected. Because with the Little Flower World, Lu Yi wouldn't have to take the previous route to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. She could use the Soul Race's ancestral land. This would save more time and energy. With this thought, Lu Yi had already formulated a plan to rush to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the Heaven Continent, in front of the 9 States Guard Palace, 300 constellations were gathered together, looking forward to it. A figure appeared out of thin air. The constellations looked over. Who else could it be but Lu Yi? They all excitedly greeted her. Lu Yi exchanged some pleasantries with them, then directly opened the door to the Little Flower World. Although the constellations didn't know what it was, they still eagerly entered one by one. After a short while, the 300 constellations all entered the Little Flower World. Lu Yi silently sensed for a moment and found that according to the size of the Little Flower World, the early stage constellations of the 9 states should be able to accommodate about 500 people. In other words, the Little Flower World could accommodate about 800 early stage constellations. If these constellations were replaced with middle or late stage constellations, the number of people it could accommodate would be reduced by a lot. If it accommodated Yu Yao, the number would be even lower. Zhang Yuan looked at Lu Yi bitterly. "Lu, next time you come back, you must bring me along." He also wanted to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Unfortunately, the 1-year deadline for the Guardian was not up yet. In the end, he did not even have the chance to draw lots. Lu Yi smiled and readily agreed, "Okay." Now that he had the Little Flower Realm and could use the Hun clan's ancestral land to travel between the myriad phenomenon sea and the 9 prefectures, it was not as troublesome as before. After bidding farewell to Zhang Yuan, Lu Ye's figure soared into the sky. Soon he met up with Ma Shangxi, who was waiting outside 9 regions. Lu Yi gave him Yu Luo's star chart and told him to follow the route of the star chart. The star boat morphed into a streak of light and sped off into the depths of the starry river. The last time she left, Lu Yi was a little worried about little Nine. But this time, she didn't have to worry about it at all. With Huan Yang as its companion, it would no longer be as lonely as before. Lu Yi planned to make a trip to the Qinglidao world to meet Wuxia. If the Qinglidao world was willing, he could help bring some people to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Of course, if Wuxia did not have this intention, then it was fine. With Ma Shangxi, who was at the peak of Yu Yao, steering the planetary boat, Lu Yi was much less worried. He focused on refining the spirit jade and cultivating. At the same time, he divided his attention and used the power of the talent tree to deduce the spirit inscriptions. After all these years of hard work, he had basically deduced most of the spirit inscriptions that he had previously possessed. Naturally, he did not need to waste his energy to deduce some spirit inscriptions that were not very useful. The spirit inscription that he was deducing now was none other than the spirit inscription of the saber draw. This spirit inscription that Wang Xiu had passed down was very strange. It should be something that he had researched himself. However, in Lu Ye's opinion, the entire spirit inscription was too bloated. It required too many yin and yang elements to construct it. Therefore, if he wanted to forge this spirit inscription into the scabbard, it would undoubtedly be better to simplify it. Of course, it would be even better if he could increase the power of the spirit inscription. With Lu Ye's own attainments in the Tao of spirit inscriptions, he naturally could not do this. As the creator of this spirit inscription, Wang Xiu's attainments in the Tao of spirit inscriptions were not something that Lu Yi could compare with. Naturally, it would not be that easy to improve the saber draw. However, with the help of the talent tree, it would be different. The talent tree's ability to deduce spirit inscriptions was mysterious and unparalleled. There was still a lot of hope for this matter. The last time Lu Yi rushed from the 9 states to the Qinglidao world, it took nearly 3 months. However, this time, it took less than half a month. Lu Yi did not directly enter the Qinglidao world. Instead, he greeted Wuxia outside the realm. After receiving his response, he entered the Qinglidao world. This was also a kind of etiquette. Although the 3 realms of the Jade Snail Galaxy were very close to the Wanxiang Sea and were as close as one, since he was a guest, he still needed to show the necessary etiquette. In front of the Divine Martial Hall, Wuxia looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. The planetary boat broke through the air and stopped not far away. Lu Yi jumped down from the planetary boat and spoke first, "Hall Master Wu." Feeling the dermic power fluctuations that flashed across Lu Ye's body, Wuxia was stunned on the spot. His face was full of shock. "How did you become Yu Yao?" After their last encounter, he knew that the realm of 9 heavens was a newly promoted large-scale realm. It was already shocking that such a realm could produce a late-stage constellation realm cultivator in just over a decade. Today, when they met again, Lu Yi was already Yu Yao. Wuxia could not believe his eyes. However, the dermic power fluctuations could not be faked. Wuxia was sure that Lu Yi had definitely become Yu Yao. The Wanxiang Sea nurtures people. Lu Yi laughed casually. The corners of Wuxia's eyes twitched. No matter how well the legendary 10,000 Elephant Sea nurtured people, it was impossible for it to allow someone to reach the Yu Yao realm so quickly. Moreover, Wuxia strangely felt a trace of pressure from Lu Yi. This was under the premise that Lu Yi did not use any power. He vaguely felt that Lu Yi must have encountered some great fortuitous encounter. Otherwise, his cultivation would not have progressed so quickly. This is... Wuxia looked at Ma Shangxi, who was behind Lu Yi and had put away her starboat. Another Yu Yao. Moreover, she was not an ordinary Yu Yao. Wuxia could clearly sense the depth of Ma Shangxi's foundation. Lu Yi explained, "A friend." Ma Shangxi smiled at Wuxia and cupped her fists. "Greetings, Hall Master Wu." Wuxia returned the greeting. "You're too polite, fellow Taoist." He secretly guessed that this Yu Yao was probably a friend that Lu Yi had made in the Wanxiang Sea. Moreover, judging from their relationship, they seemed to be very close. In just a few short years, the junior who had bitterly endured under his pressure had transformed into someone who was qualified to sit on the same level as him. Wuxia could not help but feel a little dazed. Have I grown old? Please come in. Wuxia collected his thoughts and gestured with his hand. After a short while, both of them took their seats. Wuxia ordered someone to serve spirit fruits and fragrant tea. Then he asked, "How's the situation at the Wanxiang Sea?" In fact, he was still worried about the situation at the Wanxiang Sea. Unfortunately, he was too busy and could not personally investigate the situation there. Lu Yi nodded and said, "Everything's fine." Then he explained the situation at the Three-World Island. Wuxia could not help but feel a little dazed when he heard that the cultivators of the Three Realms had established a firm foothold there not long after they went there. Now, they even had a mid-grade spiritual island. In his opinion, with the little foundation of the galaxy, it would be difficult to survive in the Wanxiang Sea. Even with the two Yu Yao, Tang Jun and Luan Xiaoa, it would be good enough if they could occupy a deserted island as a foothold. Who would have thought that they would occupy a mid-grade spiritual island in just a few years? Moreover, according to Lu Yi, the mid-grade spiritual island was still recovering. In the future, it might even become a high-grade spiritual island. What kind of luck was this? While he was excited, he could not help but worry. Like what you said, can the cultivators of the Three Realms defend the Three-World Island? He hadn't been to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but Lu Yi had talked a lot about the 10,000 Elephant Sea the last time he came. In addition, Tang Jun had asked Lu Yi to give him a jade slip that recorded a lot of information about the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Therefore, Wuxia had some understanding of the Wanxiang Sea. If the cultivators of the Three Realms had occupied a deserted island, there would not be any trouble. However, a mid-grade spiritual island would definitely be targeted. Don't worry about this, Hall Master Wu. The Three-World Island is not without support there. We still have an ally. Wuxia pondered for a moment and misunderstood. What about the cultivators of the Four-Way Galaxy? Lu Yi shook his head. A mermaid clan living in the Wanxiang Sea. The cultivators of the Four-Way Galaxy were causing trouble everywhere and had made many enemies. The Three-World Island could not have any contact with them for now. Living in the Wanxiang Sea. The mermaid clan. Wuxia was confused. Didn't they say that the Wanxiang Sea's water was so corrosive that even sunlight could not penetrate it? How could the mermaid clan live there? It's a long story. If there's a chance in the future, Hall Master Wu can go there personally and find out. Anyway, the defensive power of the Three-World Island is not weak. Ordinary forces would not be able to take it down. Lu Yi comforted him. I'm here this time to bring some people over to strengthen the strength of the Three-World Island. How many people can the Qinglidao world send? Wuxia came back to his senses and did not answer directly. Instead, he asked, "Have you been to the Jade Conch world?" Lu Yi shook his head. "I came from my homeland and came here first. Next, I'll go to the Jade Conch world." Wuxia understood and asked again, "How many people are you sending this time?" Lu Yi said, "Same as last time, 300 constellations." Wuxia heard and thought for a moment. "How about 200? If that's not enough, we'll do the same as your world and send out 300 constellations." Lu Yi was the leader, and from the looks of it, the Three-World Island was developing well in the Wanxiang Sea. If possible, Wuxia naturally wanted to send more people over. However, as the leader, Lu Yi only brought 300 people from his own world. It was not good for the Qinglidao world to send more people. There's no need for so many people. My ability is limited this time and I can't bring so many people. Just like last time, send out 100 people. Although the Little Flower world could accommodate another 500 early-stage constellations, the Qinglidao world would not send out all of them. There would definitely be mid-stage and late-stage constellations. Therefore, Lu Yi felt that 100 people was just right. After all, they still had to leave some places for the Jade Conch world. But Wuxia did not think too much. If Lu Yi said 100 people, then 100 people. He immediately sent out a message and asked the constellations of the Qinglidao world to prepare. End of chapter. Chapter 1700. After the matter was settled, Wuxia ordered people to set up a banquet to welcome Lu Yi. Lu Yi wanted to rush to the Jade Conch world as soon as possible, But since Wuxia was so enthusiastic, he could not refuse. It would only take one night anyway, so he agreed. Moreover, it would take some time for the Qingli Taoist world to select the 100 people. During the banquet, the three Yu Yao toasted and drank happily. Wuxia wiped his mouth and put his arm around Lu Ye's shoulder. Junior brother, when we reach the three-world island, tell Tang Jun to come back and take my place. He is an old man with no future. Why should he stay in such a place? Ask him to come back and look after the house. I will go out and work hard. I promise to give the children of this world a good future. Okay, I will pass on the message. Lu Yi nodded. Tang Jun was indeed old and had no ambition, but Wuxia was different. He was in the prime of his life. Now that he had the chance, he wanted to give it a try, not only for the future of the Qingli Taoist world, but also for himself. Unfortunately, there were only 2 Yu Yao in the Qingli Taoist world. Without Tang Jun, he had to stay behind. Since Wuxia had this idea, Lu Yi could help to convey it. As for what decision Tang Jun would make, it was not something he needed to worry about. The next day, as the door to the flower world opened, Wuxia was shocked. A small world? Lu Yi nodded. Keep them in the small world, it will be more convenient to travel. Wuxia finally understood why Lu Yi came alone this time. He thought that the 300 cultivators of the 9 states were on the way, but he did not expect them to have a small world. No wonder Lu Yi said yesterday that his ability was limited and he could not bring too many people over. It was because of the size of the small world. Under Wuxia's command, more than 100 Yu Yao from the Qingli Taoist world passed through the door and entered the little flower world. Lu Yi transmitted his voice and asked the Yu Yao to take care of them. It was not very comfortable to stay in the little flower world. If it only accommodated one person, there was still some space to move around. However, with so many people squeezed in, there was not much space to move around. The Yu Yao were basically in a state of meditation. Now that there were more than 100 Yu Yao cultivators, it was even more cramped. However, since Lu Yi had spoken, the Yu Yao. No matter what, everyone would have to survive on the three-world island in the future. They would have to help each other when they needed help. Let's go, Wuxia said. He was prepared to accompany Lu Yi to Jade Conch. This was something that had been finalized at the banquet last night. Because Lu Yi had never been to Jade Conch before, even if they had some cooperation, it would undoubtedly be easier to communicate with someone who was familiar with both sides acting as a bridge. Without saying a word, Ma Shangxi summoned her star boat. Lu Yi took the lead and boarded it, followed by Wuxia. Sir, then shall we set off? Ma Shangxi asked. He did not address Lu Yi as Saint Senior, as Lu Yi had requested. The title, Sacred Master, was too big, and it was easy for people to associate it with the vampires. Lu Yi wasn't afraid, but Ma Shangxi's identity couldn't be exposed. Let's go. Lu Yi raised his hand. Wuxia was sitting not far from Lu Yi, his expression uncertain. Last night, he had noticed that this Ma Shangxi Yu Yao seemed to be very respectful to Lu Yi. How was this a friendship? From Wuxia's observation, the two of them had a master-servant relationship. Moreover, the one with a lower cultivation was the master, and the one with a higher cultivation was the servant. Wuxia really couldn't understand what was going on. If Lu Yi was really the young master of a top force, it would be understandable. However, the 9 heavens realm that Lu Yi came from was only a large realm. Where did he get this servant from? However, no matter what was going on, Lu Yi was Yu Yao, and Ma Shangxi was a late-stage Yu Yao. Even if the rest were all early-stage constellation masters, the 9 heavens realm's foundation was still slightly better than the Qingli Dao worlds. This made Wuxia feel a sense of crisis. There were a total of 3 large realms in the galaxy. Jade Conch was the eldest, and the Qingli Dao world was originally the second. Now it had suddenly become the third. Wuxia wanted Tang Jun to come back and replace him in the realm. He wanted to go out and work hard. If he didn't work hard, he would lose his status in the future. Along the way, Wuxia had a lot on his mind. From time to time, he would chat with Ma Shangxi. As for Lu, she was still cultivating and deducing spirit inscriptions. It was not far from the Qingli Dao world to the Jade Conch galaxy. With Ma Shangxi's speed, they arrived in half a month. It was indeed very time-consuming for a cultivator to travel through the galaxy. However, as one's cultivation level increased, the efficiency of traveling would gradually increase. If one day Lu Yi could become a sunshine cultivator, she might be able to travel through the entire Jade Conch galaxy in less than half a month. Looking from afar, the Jade Conch galaxy was a huge pale green planet. In terms of size, it was slightly larger than the 9 states. Before they got close, they could feel an extremely rich wood-type aura from the Jade Conch galaxy. It was full of vitality. This was a seemingly healthy realm. If the 9 states were a toddler learning how to walk, then the Jade Conch galaxy would be a strong young man. It had a long lifespan and a bright future. If there was an opportunity in the future, it might be able to become a top realm. Of course, there was not much hope. In the galaxy, there were only a few top realms that could nurture spirit jade veins. Not every large realm could grow to this stage. Are there very few cultivators in the Jade Conch galaxy? Lu Yi asked. This was mainly because they were already near the Jade Conch galaxy. However, Lu Yi did not see many active cultivators. There are quite a few. Any large realm would have a large number of constellations. After all, constellations are the foundation of a large realm. Something might have happened, Wuxia explained. Even if there were only a few of them as the star boat approached, the 3 of them were discovered by the Jade Conch galaxy cultivators. Wuxia was a familiar face here. Therefore, the Jade Conch galaxy cultivators who came to inquire about him quickly passed on the news. Not long after, the star boat slowly landed in front of a hall at the top of a spirit mountain in the Jade Conch galaxy. Wuxia was the first to jump down. Lu Yi followed closely behind. Ma Shangxi put away the star boat and stood quietly behind Lu Yi. An old man with white hair and a beard stood quietly in front of them. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and he gave off the air of a transcendent being. However, Lu Yi had seen too much of the sect master. He had a feeling that this old man's clothes would tear apart at any moment and reveal his muscles. Realm Lord Cho. Wuxia cupped his fists and bowed. Sorry for the intrusion. On the way here, Wuxia had already told Lu Yi some things about the Jade Conch galaxy. Therefore, Lu Yi had a basic understanding of the Yu Yao here. When he heard Wuxia's greeting, he knew that this old man was the realm lord of the Jade Conch galaxy, Cho Wu, who was at the peak of the Yu Yao realm. However, although Cho Wu was already at the peak of the Yu Yao realm, he was already old. His condition was similar to Tang Jun's. Therefore, there was no hope for him to reach the Sunshine realm in this lifetime. In this regard, he was inferior to Ma Shangxi. Ma Shangxi was at the peak of the Yu Yao realm, and she still had hopes of reaching the Sunshine realm. Moreover, he could sense that her opportunity lay in the blood refinement realm. Unfortunately, Lu Yi did not allow her to go. Hall Master Wu. Cho Wu smiled warmly and returned the greeting. He looked past Wuxia and looked at Lu Yi. You must be Lu Yi of the 9 heavens, right? Lu Yi stepped forward. Greetings, Realm Lord Cho. Greetings, senior brothers and senior sisters. The 3 Yu Yaos beside Cho Wu also returned the greeting. They all looked at Lu Yi curiously. Lu Yi had not come to the Jade Conch galaxy the last time they worked together. It was Wuxia who had gone there in his place. However, Lu Yi had managed to open up a path from their galaxy to the 10,000 Elephant Sea by himself. This naturally piqued the interest of these Yu Yaos. In any galaxy that strived for advancement, the value of such a path was immeasurable. The Jade Conch galaxy actually attached great importance to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Although they had only mobilized 100 people, all of them were late-stage and mid-stage cultivators. There was not a single early-stage cultivator among them. Moreover, they were led by a late-stage Yu Yao like Luan Xiaoa. If they did not attach great importance to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they would not have mobilized such a lineup. Ever since Luan Xiaoa left with her team, there had been no news of her. The Jade Conch galaxy also wanted to know what happened after that. Unfortunately, they did not have the opportunity to inquire. Today, Lu Yi had actually come with Wuxia. Therefore, the Yu Yaos who were still in the Jade Conch galaxy had all gathered here. Firstly, they wanted to see Lu Yi. Secondly, they wanted to know the current situation of their realm's cultivators. Heroes indeed come from the young. Chou Wu's eyes flashed as he praised. The other Yu Yaos also realized that Lu Ye's cultivation was not at the star constellation realm. He was at the Yu Yao's level. Originally, they had all come with the mentality of meeting a junior. However, if everyone's cultivation level was the same, then this kind of mentality was different. They looked at each other, then at Wuxia. The Nine Heavens realm had only become a large realm a dozen years ago. What was up with this Yu Yao? Realm Lord Chou, you flatter me. I'm still young, and my experience is still shallow. I still need the guidance of my senior brothers and senior sisters. Everyone praised him. Lu Yi naturally would not be stingy with a few flattering words. Junior brother Lu is too humble. When I was your age, I was only at the spirit ocean realm. A bald man to Chou Wu's right rubbed his head and smiled. Junior brother, you have a promising future. You will definitely achieve great things in the future. I hope so. Chou Wu then looked at Ma Shangxi, who was standing on Lu Ye's back. This fellow Taoist is... He could sense that this person, who seemed to be quiet and had no presence, was no weaker than him. He was definitely at the peak of the Yu Yao realm. Where did he come from? There was no such person in their galaxy. This time, Ma Shangxi did not wait for Lu Yi to introduce him. He said, Ma Shangxi, Lord Lu's servant. Greetings, lords. Lu Ye's eyes flashed. He saw through Ma Shangxi's thoughts and did not deny it. Ma Shang's thoughts were very simple. His respect for Lu Yi could not be concealed no matter what. Wuxia had already noticed some problems. His relationship with Lu Yi was not as simple as just friends. Since that was the case, he might as well make it clear and prevent others from guessing. End of chapter. Chapter 1701. Ma Shangxi's honesty shocked Yu Luo and the other Yu Yaos. Servant? A peak Yu Yao servant? The few of them almost couldn't believe their ears and were stunned for a moment. But looking at Ma Shangxi's expression, they knew that he wasn't joking at all. In front of Lu Yi, he had indeed lowered himself very much, and even called them lords. Logically speaking, a peak Yu Yao like Ma Shangxi should be giving them face by calling them fellow cultivators. However, when he called them lords, Yu Luo and the other Yu Yaos felt uncomfortable. The reason he called them that was obviously because Lu Yi had already addressed them as fellow disciples. If he called them fellow cultivators, where would that put Lu Yi? Chou Wu glanced at Wuxia, wondering what was going on. Wuxia only shook his head slowly. He was also a little confused. On the way here, he could see that Ma Shangxi was very respectful to Lu Yi. However, he didn't expect such a strong cultivator to call himself a servant so frankly. To have such a strong cultivator as a servant, did Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens latch onto Rizhao's thigh? Wuxia couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. He wasn't the only one who thought so. Yu Luo and the other Yu Yaos also thought so. Because this was the only reasonable explanation. Esteemed guests, there's no need to stand. Come in for a chat. Junior brother Lu, please. Chou Wu quickly adjusted his expression and gestured with his hand. In this short period of time, Yu Luo and the other Yu Yao's attitudes changed a few times. When they heard that Wuxia had brought Lu Yi of the Nine Heavens, they had come with the mentality of meeting an outstanding junior. However, when they saw that Lu Yi's cultivation had reached Yu Yao's level, they realized that they should treat each other as equals. With Ma Shangxi addressing him as Lord, Lu Yi instantly became an esteemed guest. Yu Kong and Yu Yao no longer dared to show the slightest bit of contempt. Although they didn't have such an attitude before, when the strong faced the weak, they would still have a sense of superiority. Thank you for your hospitality. Lu Yi's expression was normal. He nodded and walked in side by side with Lu Yi. In the main hall, everyone took their seats. Ma Shangxi sat quietly to the left of Lu Yi, truly assuming the posture of a servant. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Lu Yi finally got to know the few Yu Yao present. Jade Conch had more than just a few Yu Yaos. As the leader of this galaxy, although they had never produced a sunshine powerhouse, there were always around 10 Yu Yaos. According to Wuxia, at their peak, there were 15 Yu Yaos in Jade Conch. For a veteran large domain, this was undoubtedly a very shallow foundation. For example, the unbounded realm that Lu Yi had gone to was also a large realm. However, not only was there sunshine, there were also plenty of Yuyao there. Jade Conk's situation had to do with its remote location. It had never been connected to the mainstream of the cosmos, and it had never interacted with the other galaxies. It had always been fumbling around on its own in terms of cultivation. Secondly, the resources in the starry skies were limited. However, it was impossible for the Yuyao to remain in the realms forever. Some Yuyao liked to travel all over the place. Even the 9 prefectures' constellations spent most of their time in the starry skies, let alone the Yuyao. After chatting for a while, Chou Wu finally asked about the situation at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Luan Xiaoa had led 100 elites to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the blink of an eye, there had been no news of her for a few years. Unfortunately, there was no way to gather information here. It would be a lie to say that they were not worried. Since Lu Yi had come this time, they naturally had to find out more about him. Lu Yi did not hide anything. He briefly recounted the battles they had encountered along the way to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. When they heard that the 3 realms fleet had been involved in the battle between the 4 prefectures and the blood race, the Yuyao present all paled. After all, according to Lu Yi, there were almost 10 sunshine powerhouses involved in that battle. The Yuyao constellations were even more difficult to calculate. With a 3 realms fleet size, how could they have fared well if they had participated in the battle? Fortunately, although the outcome was not satisfactory, the 3 realms fleet did not suffer too great of a loss. In the end, they survived the ordeal and continued on to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. They also learned that the 3 realms cultivators had occupied a 3-realm island on the 10,000 Elephant Sea and that everything was fine. Only then did they relax. However, the Jade Conch cultivators soon realized the problem Wuxia had asked before. The 3 realms cultivators did not have a strong foundation. Would they be able to defend a mid-level spirit island if they occupied it? Lu Yi also brought up the mermaid clan. This made them feel much more at ease. When Lu Yi said this, Chou Wu looked at Lu Yi with a complicated gaze. From this account, Chou Wu could tell that although the 3 realms fleet had suffered some setbacks and some losses a few years ago, overall, it had been very smooth. It was even smoother for them to gain a foothold on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Chou Wu was indeed old, but that did not mean that he was senile. He knew that these smooth sailing did not come for no reason. How could things progress so smoothly in a place like the 10,000 Elephant Sea that was so competitive? He knew better than anyone else what kind of power Luan Xiaoa and the cultivators she had brought with her. She would definitely not be able to resolve any setbacks in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. The people from the Green Dawn Dao world did not have this ability either. Then who could resolve these issues? The root of the problem was probably the young man in front of him. Chou Wu did not know what Lu Yi was capable of, but he knew that what Lu Yi had said was only a part of it. There were many things that he had not said. Other things aside, how could the mermaid clan that lived under the 10,000 Elephant Sea become the most solid ally of the 3 realms island? Chou Wu increasingly felt that Lu Yi was not simple. He looked over and seemed to see a tall figure standing behind Lu. Realm Lord Chiu, senior brothers and sisters, I came back this time because I want to bring another group of people to the 3-world island. Hall Master Wu has sent out 100 people, so I hope that your realm can send another 100 people. The 10,000 Elephant Sea is not peaceful. Our people can only rely on themselves there, said Lu Yi. He thought that Yu Luo would definitely not refuse this because no one could resist the temptation of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He was even prepared for Yu Luo to ask him to bring more people over. Who would have thought that after hearing this, Chou Wu did not immediately respond. Instead, he showed a troubled expression. After a moment of silence, Chou Wu said, "Junior brother, if you are not in a hurry, why don't you stay in the 3 realms for a few days? We will discuss it and then give you an answer, okay?" Lu Yi blinked. He did not understand what was going on. Why did he not accept a good thing that came knocking on his door? Did he not trust him? That did not make sense. Lu Yi did not sense any distrust from Chou Wu and the others. He did not think too much about it. He nodded and said, "No problem." What followed was idle chatter. The Yu Luo domain's understanding of the 10,000 Elephant Sea was mostly conveyed by Wu Zhuo last time, so they did not know much. Now that Lu Yi, who had been in the 10,000 Elephant Sea for many years, was in front of him, there were naturally many things he wanted to know. For a moment, the atmosphere was lively. Lu Yi also took the opportunity to ask, "Master Chou, do you have any suitable materials to forge a magic treasure?" Chou Wu heard this and said, "Junior brother wants to forge a magic treasure?" Lu Yi patted the mountain pan saber at his waist and said with a smile, "I have advanced to you, Yao, so I need something handy. If you have any suitable materials, I can buy some." Actually, the best choice was to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to do this. There were many materials in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. As long as Lu Yi had spiritual jades, he could buy anything he wanted. However, what Lu Yi wanted to forge was not an ordinary scabbard. He wanted to cast the saber drawing/spirit pattern into the scabbard. The spirit pattern was extremely complicated. Lu Yi estimated that even a sunshine blacksmith might not be able to successfully forge it. Moreover, he could not find a blacksmith of that level. He could only do it himself. Lu Yi did not have much confidence in forging such a scabbard. Although he had some foundation in forging weapons, he had never put his heart into it. He did not know if he could succeed. Fortunately, he had the talent tree. This was an advantage that no blacksmith had. Therefore, regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he had to give it a try. He would just treat it as practice. When he had better materials in the future, it would not be too late to forge a better scabbard. Chou Wu said, "Junior brother, what kind of materials do you want?" After pondering for a moment, he said, "How about this? Let junior brother Han accompany you to the treasury. You can take whatever you like. Moreover, junior brother Han is the most outstanding artifact refiner in this world. If you have anything you want to forge, just ask him to help you forge it." Junior brother Han was called Han Dong. He was the bald man who spoke to Lu Yi when he first met him. Lu Yi had already met him. Lu Yi clasped his fists and said, "Thank you, Realm Lord Chou. I will definitely give you the spiritual jades needed for the materials." Chou Wu waved his hand and said, "Junior brother, after leaving the Wanxiang Sea, you did not keep it to yourself. Instead, you shared it with the Qingli Taoist world and Yukong. Your generosity is admirable. Speaking of which, Qingli and Yukong are indebted to you. If you like some materials, just take them. Don't mention the spiritual jades again." Although Lu Yi had dragged the Qingli Taoist world and the Jade Conch to the Wanxiang Sea with the intention of borrowing their strength, the two worlds had indeed received a favor in this matter. Some of the refining materials in the treasure vault were given away, but the Jade Conch was not so stingy as to take Lu Ye's spiritual jade. Hearing this, Lu Yi knew that even if he insisted, they would not accept the spiritual jades. He raised his cup and said, "Thank you, senior brother." After the banquet, the guests and the host enjoyed themselves. After the banquet, Lu Yi was arranged by Yukong to stay in a beautiful valley. Wu Zhuo was also here to accompany him. The next day, before Lu Yi could take the initiative to speak, the bald Han Dong came up and said that he wanted to take Lu Yi to the treasury. Lu Yi took Ma Shangxi and followed him out. The Jade Conch sect also had its own treasury, but the treasury of a realm and the treasury of a sect could not be compared at all. The Jade Conch sect's treasury was divided into several levels, each of which was filled to the brim with good things. One of the levels was filled with materials for refining weapons. Most of these materials were bred by the Jade Conch world itself. Some of them were brought back by cultivators who went out and encountered in the starry sky. Lu Yi was dazzled and did not know what to do for a moment. End of chapter. Chapter 1702. Fortunately, Han Dong was a refiner and knew the materials here like the back of his hand. Seeing Lu Yi hesitate, he asked him what he needed. After learning that Lu Yi wanted to forge a magic treasure scabbard, he helped him take out some materials from the treasure house. Han Dong was very forthright and enthusiastic. After leading Lu Yi out of the treasure house, he said, "Let's go, I'll take you to the Tool Valley. That's where we forge weapons in this world." Immediately, the three of them rushed in the direction of the Tool Valley and soon arrived. When they arrived, Han Dong led Lu Yi down a passage. Lu Yi didn't know how far they went. During this time, Lu Yi even saw several rivers of magma flowing by, and the surrounding temperature was getting hotter and hotter. Generally speaking, refining places would be set up in a similar environment because they could use the power of the earth fire to better refine weapons. In the depths of the Tool Valley, there were many jade shell cultivators, bare-chested and sweating, refining weapons on a refining table. The deeper they went, the fewer cultivators there were. In the end, they couldn't see a single person. Han Dong took off his clothes, revealing his strong muscles, and pointed to a huge refining table. This is where I refine weapons. If Junior Apprentice Brother doesn't mind, I can refine a magic treasure scabbard for Junior Apprentice Brother. This was not a boast. In the entire Jade Shell world, Han Dong's attainments in refining weapons were second to none. Most of the magic treasures in the Jade Shell world were made by him. Refining a scabbard without any difficulty was naturally as easy as pinching a conch for him. Lu Yi smiled. Senior Apprentice Brother Han, what I want to refine is not an ordinary scabbard. Senior Apprentice Brother may not be able to refine it. Han Dong snorted when he heard this, but he didn't get angry. Junior Apprentice Brother, are you looking down on me? Whether you can refine it or not, Junior Apprentice Brother, first draw a path. In this world, if I can't refine it, then no one else can. He wanted Lu Yi to draw a path because he wanted to ask Lu Yi what kind of restriction he wanted to refine in the scabbard. Lu Yi thought for a moment, then took out a jade board, inscribed a part of the sword draw spirit pattern, and handed it to Han Dong. Han Dong took it and examined it for a long time before falling into deep thought. As the most outstanding refiner in Jade Snail, he naturally dabbled in spiritual tattoos. However, what he dabbled in were all spiritual tattoos used in refining weapons. Even so, he could tell at a glance that the spiritual tattoo given by Lu Yi was incomplete. If an incomplete spirit rune was already so complicated, how complicated would it be if it was a complete spirit rune? He scratched his bald head. It's a little difficult. Wasn't this a little F***king difficult? This wasn't something a human could refine. At the very least, Han Dong didn't think he had the ability to do so. It should be known that the twin branch spirit inscriptions were not as complicated as this one, but it was extremely difficult for the top forces in the Wanxiang Sea to decipher it. They had already mastered the twin branch spirit inscriptions, but if they wanted to use this spirit inscriptions to refine a disc array, even those top forces weapon refiners had to fumble for a long time before they had a certain success rate. This was also the reason why the price of the twin chi-connected formation disc was so high above the myriad manifestation C. It was because no tool refiner could refine it as easily as Lu Yi. Although Han Dong's refining skills were not bad, there was still a gap between him and the weapon refiners who were carefully nurtured by the top forces. If he were to inscribe this spirit pattern on a jade board, he might have a chance of succeeding after trying thousands or tens of thousands of times. However, the difficulty of inscribing on a jade board and casting the spirit pattern into the scabbard was completely different. He wanted to ask what kind of spiritual tattoo this was, but he swallowed the words back down. Some things couldn't be inquired casually. This spiritual tattoo was so complicated that its power was unfathomable and extremely precious. If Senior Brother Han has nothing to do, can you give me a few pointers here? Lu Yi asked. Han Dong was stunned for a moment before he came back to his senses. Junior Brother is also proficient in refining weapons? From Lu Ye's words, it was obvious that he wanted to do it himself. I've learned a little, Lu Yi replied. Han Dong didn't know what to say. He had only learned a little and yet he wanted to refine such a complicated spiritual tattoo. He really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, Lu Yi was now an important guest of Jade Snail. Han Dong couldn't say anything too unpleasant, so he could only say, no problem. Anyway, I have nothing to do recently. He thought that after a few attempts, Lu Yi would give up after making no progress. In the following days, Lu Yi and Han Dong stayed in the deepest part of Tool Valley. Beside the refining table, Lu Ye's spiritual power surged endlessly. Han Dong soon discovered that Lu Yi did have some foundation in refining weapons, but he shouldn't have studied the way of refining weapons deeply. This could be seen from his many performances in refining weapons. Thinking about it, at such a young age, Yu Yao's cultivation must have been painstakingly cultivating every day. How could she have the time to study something like refining weapons? But as time passed, Han Dong became more and more shocked. Because Lu Ye's growth was extremely fast. It was as if he was born for refining weapons. What was even more precious was that Lu Ye's spiritual power was of the fire attribute, which was what a weapon refiner needed the most. Lu Ye's talent in the way of refining weapons was still very good. Otherwise, in the secret realm of 9 regions, Sword Tool Sect's Kong Kong would not have taught him the way of refining weapons. In the previous 9 regions era, Sword Tool Sect was extremely prosperous. The Sword Dao and Tools Dao of the sect were second to none in the entire 9 regions. Among them, the Sword Dao inheritance was obtained by Nian Yuxian, and the Tools Dao inheritance was taken out of the secret realm by Lu Yi and given to Ouyang Zi of 9 regions. Lu Yi had the foundation taught by Kong Kong, and all kinds of refining techniques made Han Dong fascinated. Originally, Han Dong held the mentality of giving pointers, but after a few days of getting along, the state of the two became mutual discussions. In such an atmosphere, Lu Ye's refining skills naturally grew rapidly. However, it was not so easy to cast a suitable scabbard. It was very simple for him to refine the twin chi linked array disc, because the most important thing about the array disc was the spirit pattern. The array disc itself was a carrier, so Lu Yi could just refine it casually. But the scabbard could not. Although it was also a carrier of the spirit pattern, if the refining was not good enough, once the accumulated power in the spirit pattern was too strong, the scabbard could not bear it. To ensure the quality of the scabbard and to ensure the integrity of the spirit pattern, the combination of the two was not an ordinary difficulty. After spending half a month in the Tool Valley, Lu Yi began to really cast the scabbard. Han Dong was not optimistic about this. In his opinion, Lu Ye's refining skills were not even as good as his own. How could he possibly cast such a complicated spirit pattern? If he did not cast the spirit pattern and only cast a scabbard, it would be meaningless at all. But what surprised him was that on the first try, Lu Yi had cast 10% progress. Although because of a small mistake, all the previous efforts were wasted, such a result was undoubtedly amazing. Han Dong was confused, because this kind of thing should not have happened at all. In his opinion, with Lu Ye's current refining skills, not to mention 10% progress, it was impossible to achieve even 5% progress. How could he know that Lu Yi had the talent tree? Even if his refining skills were not as good as his, he had a unique advantage when it came to casting spirit patterns. He tried again and failed again and again. His progress was high and low, but as long as he failed, he would have to start all over again. Fortunately, refining was different from refining pills. If he failed in refining pills, the furnace of spirit patterns would basically be destroyed. If he failed in refining, as long as the materials were not seriously damaged, he could go back to the furnace and start all over again. This was an advantage that refining pills could not compare to. Even so, the materials that Han Dong had brought out from the treasure trove had been severely depleted. He had no choice but to return to the treasure trove and bring back more materials. Lu Yi did not have any worries and went all out. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi had been in Jade Conch for almost 2 months. During these 2 months, he had failed countless times and had to start all over again. In the deepest part of the Tool Valley, in front of the huge refining table, Lu Yi held the newly cast scabbard in his hand and carefully examined it, his eyes blood red. After 2 months without sleep and rest, Lu Yi felt exhausted even after advancing to the Yu Yao realm. Fortunately, the scabbard was finally finished. Beside him, Han Dong's condition was even worse than his. His eye sockets were sunken and his beard was unshaven. Han Dong's cultivation was not weak. He was at the Yu Yao realm middle stage, a minor realm higher than Lu Yi. However, one's cultivation realm was one's cultivation realm. One's foundation could not be determined by one's cultivation realm. Lu Yi had reached the peak of the constellation realm. In terms of physique, Han Dong was far inferior to him. At this moment, Han Dong was also looking at the scabbard. He smacked his lips and said, "It's not easy." He did not expect that it would take him 2 months to forge a scabbard. Fortunately, the results were not bad. It is not easy. Lu Yi examined the new scabbard. This thing was forged by him, just like the Panshan saber. It was pitch black and looked unremarkable. However, if one looked down on it because of its unremarkable appearance, one would have to pay the price. Lu Yi channeled a little of his transcendence energy into it. He immediately felt his transcendence energy flow along the lines of the spiritual inscriptions. He took the Panshan saber from his waist, unsheathed it, and inserted it into the new scabbard. He continued to nourish it with his transcendence energy. He looked at Han Dong and said, "Thank you, Senior Brother Han. You're welcome. I've also benefited a lot." During the exchange, Han Dong had indeed learned many things from Lu Yi. They originated from the sword instrument sect, and were things that Jade Snail's Blue Flag Street did not have. Han Dong felt that if he could understand these things, his attainments in refining would rise to another level. To a weapon refiner, this was undoubtedly extremely precious. "Let's go and have a drink," Lu Yi called out. Han Dong did not refuse. From beginning to end, he did not ask what the spiritual inscriptions were for. Beside him, Ma Shangxi, who had waited for 2 months, followed. A moment later, in the valley where Jade Snail was placed, Lu Yi and Han Dong sat across from each other, drinking and chatting happily. Lu Yi did not expect to spend so much time at Jade Snail. Fortunately, the results were smooth. With the experience of forging the scabbard, it would be easier to forge it next time with better materials. He prepared to meet Cho Wu tomorrow and ask him about the arrangements at Jade Snail. He had to rush back to the Wanxiang Sea. End of chapter. Chapter 1703. In Han Dong's residence, Lu Yi was drinking and chatting happily with him. After forging the scabbard of the Mountain Pandao, Lu Yi was still very happy. Although the quality of this scabbard was not very high, it could temporarily meet his needs. When his cultivation was high in the future, it would not be too late to reforge it again. At that time, it would only be easier. Moreover, Lu Yi had a small idea. The reason why the sword draw was so powerful was because the cultivator's spiritual power had accumulated and nourished the spirit pattern. This thing did not have any rigid requirements for the cultivator's own strength, as long as one was a weapon cultivator. In other words, anyone who had this scabbard could basically use the sword draw ability. Therefore, this thing had the possibility of being popularized. Of course, it was not possible now. Lu Yi had spent 2 months forging the scabbard. How could he have so much time to forge it for others? If there was a chance, perhaps he could try it on a small scale. Among the people close to him, there were still a few weapon cultivators. Not to mention others, the sword cultivator Moon Immortal was quite suitable to have a scabbard containing the sword draw spirit pattern. The killing power of a sword cultivator was originally very strong, and with the instantaneous explosion of the spirit pattern, it would naturally be even stronger. He still had to cultivate the 9 regions' own weapon refiners. If there were enough outstanding weapon refiners in the 9 regions, this idea could be realized. At that time, all the weapon cultivators in the 9 regions would be able to use this method. How terrifying would the explosion of power be? However, this was also difficult. Han Dong's Moon Immortal cultivation was not low, but even if Lu Yi taught him the spirit pattern, he might not be able to forge it in a few years. Lu Yi thought about it briefly and did not think too much about it for the time being. He continued to drink with Han Dong. Han Dong suddenly took out a sound talisman to check. Someone must have sent him a message. The next moment, he suddenly stood up with a shocked expression. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi saw that his expression was not right and asked. Something unexpected happened. As Han Dong spoke, he was about to walk out, as if he was in a hurry. "Junior brother, go back and rest first. I'll come back to find you later." Lu Yi nodded. "Okay." Unexpectedly, Han Dong stopped and looked back at Lu Yi for a while. He raised his hand and said, "Junior brother, come together." Lu Yi was at a loss. He did not know why Han Dong suddenly changed his mind. From the change in Han Dong's expression, it was clear that this was no small matter. Otherwise, Yu Yao wouldn't be in such a hurry. Lu Yi originally thought that this was a family matter of the Jade Conch world, but Han Dong had invited him along. Something didn't seem right. He didn't feel that this matter had anything to do with him, and he wouldn't make any malicious guesses. Since Han Dong had called for him, he stepped forward and followed. Ma Shangxi followed closely behind. 3 figures soared into the sky. Under Han Dong's lead, they hurriedly rushed towards the outside world. Lu Yi acutely sensed that Han Dong was not the only one who was moving in the Jade Conch world. The few Yu Yaos he had seen before were also moving. Even Realm Lord Chou Wu was flying out. What the hell is going on? Normally speaking, unless it was something that could destroy a realm, a sector lord like Chou Wu wouldn't easily take action. But now, even Chou Wu couldn't sit still. This was definitely not a small matter. Lu Yi was puzzled, but he didn't ask. What he should know, he would know. What he shouldn't know, there was no need to ask. Before long, the Jade Conch world's Yu Yaos gathered nearby. They were all familiar faces. The Yu Yaos Lu Yi had seen before were all here. Even Wuxia was present. This surprised Lu Yi because he and Han Dong had been refining artifacts for 2 months. He had thought that Wuxia would leave first. Lu Yi looked at Wuxia, seeking his opinion. Wuxia slowly shook his head, a similarly confused expression on his face. What's the situation? Han Dong asked anxiously. Let's talk as we move. Chou Wu called out, immediately summoning a star boat. Everyone boarded, and the star boat transformed into a streak of light that shot into the depths of the cosmos. Lu Yi sensed something and turned to look back. He saw figures flying out of the Jade Conch world on star boats as well. They were the constellations of the Jade Conch world. Not only were the constellations of the inner realm moving in the same direction, but the constellations of the outer realm were also rushing in the same direction. From the looks of it, all the cultivators of the Jade Conch constellation were on the move. Lu Yi immediately realized that this matter was far more serious than he had imagined. The Jade Conch world was already on the verge of war. On the starboat, the Jade Conch world's Yu Yaos listened to Chou Wu's narration, and their expressions gradually turned grave. Lu Yi and Wuxia stood at the side and listened. They slowly understood what was going on. The entire Jade Conch galaxy was located in a very remote location in the cosmos. This remoteness did not mean that the cultivation resources in the galaxy were poor. Judging from the current situation, although the cultivation resources in the galaxy were not abundant, it was actually not too bad. The biggest reason for its remoteness was that it was difficult to communicate with other galaxies. When the 9 states became a large domain, the constellations began to explore the surrounding cosmos. The Jade Conch world had become a large domain many years ago. There were almost 10 Yu Yaos, so naturally, they would explore the surrounding cosmos as well. The range of their exploration was definitely much further than the 9 states. Jade's Snail Galaxy was now divided into 3 large realms, extending outwards from the direction of 9 prefectures. Based on the speed of the later stages of Constellation Realm, they would enter an extremely vast and desolate galaxy in 2 years' time. That place was deathly still, and there wasn't even a single realm of the lowest level, much less a cultivation realm. Extending outward from the direction of the Green Dawn Dao world was the Chaotic Explosion Zone. Extending outward from the Jade Conch galaxy was also a desolate domain. However, there were other galaxies in this direction. There was once a Yu Yao in the Jade Conch galaxy who spent 20 years to pass through the desolate domain and reach this galaxy. 20 years was not a short time, even for Yu Yao. With such a long distance, it was difficult for the Jade Conch galaxy to communicate with the other side. Moreover, the Jade Conch galaxy did not have a strong foundation, so they did not dare to make contact with the other side. In the cosmos, there were actually many galaxies like the Jade Conch galaxy. They were either surrounded by the vast desolate domain or extremely dangerous space wonders. This caused the galaxy to be isolated from the outside world. Under normal circumstances, galaxies like the Jade Conch galaxy would not be too strong, but they would not be too weak either. If they closed their doors and developed on their own, they would not have much of a future. They would not be able to participate in the various top battles in the cosmos, but they would not be in any great danger either. However, unforeseen events happened from time to time. Nearly 3 years ago, the cultivators of the Jade Conch Galaxy discovered something strange in the direction of the desolate domain. There was suddenly an additional layer of cold air in the cosmos, enveloping a large area. This kind of thing was very rare, so when the news was sent back, Yu Yao of the Jade Conch Galaxy immediately went to the scene to investigate. However, she could not find anything out of the ordinary. The cold air that enveloped a large area had appeared out of nowhere and did not dissipate. However, it did not cause any specific harm. After a long time, the Jade Conch Galaxy stopped paying attention to it. The cultivators of the Jade Conch Galaxy called that location the Cold Region and even marked it on the star map. Soon, the cultivators of the Jade Conch Galaxy discovered that the cold air in the cold region was not harmful. Instead, it had some benefits. This was because cultivators who possessed the power of the cold element would be able to cultivate much more efficiently in the cold region. Gradually, the cold region became a favorite cultivation place for some cultivators. Many cultivators who cultivated the power of the cold element or secret techniques liked to go there. However, things changed half a year ago. The cold region, which had been quiet for 3 years, had some strange changes. The cold air seemed to have come alive and was constantly vibrating rhythmically. The Jade Conch Galaxy naturally did not dare to be negligent. They immediately sent many people to monitor it. Among them were several Yu Yao. Lu Yi and Wu Zhuo had come 2 months ago and discovered that the Jade Conch Galaxy had very few constellations because of this. No one knew whether the cold region was a blessing or a curse. As a precaution, Chou Wu deployed nearly half of the Jade Conch Galaxy's forces there. This way, if anything happened in the cold region, the Jade Conch Galaxy would have enough power to respond. In the end, the unforeseen event really did happen. Half a month ago, the space in the cold region suddenly shattered. Immediately after, a bug path appeared and a large number of creatures charged out fearlessly. Fortunately, Chou Wu had the foresight to place a large number of people there. Therefore, when the situation became unfavorable, the Yu Yao who were overseeing the area immediately led the constellations to stop them. The bug path's location was fixed. The Jade Conch Galaxy had an absolute geographical advantage. The creatures that charged out of the bug path were not strong and many of them were killed. However, the enemy's power was very special. It seemed to possess an extremely strange power of pollution. After they died, the power of pollution did not dissipate. It gathered and grew larger, causing the Jade Conch cultivators to be restrained. In addition, there was an endless stream of invaders. It seemed like there was no end to them. It was only a matter of time before the cold region's bug path fell. Therefore, the Yu Yao on the other side made a prompt decision. She ordered someone to send a message to the Jade Conch Galaxy and ask for reinforcements. The message passed through layers and layers. It only took a day to reach the Jade Conch Galaxy from the cold region. When the Jade Conch Galaxy received the message, they did not delay. Almost all of the remaining forces of the entire domain went to provide reinforcements. This was because Chou Wu realized that this was very likely to be a disaster for the Jade Conch Galaxy. If it was not handled well, the entire domain would be destroyed. Lu Yi frowned when he heard this. Just as he was about to ask which race the invaders were from, he suddenly felt his sleeve being tugged. He turned to look and saw Ma Shangxi looking at him. He transmitted his voice with a solemn expression, "My lord, it should be the filth race." Lu Yi was startled and asked, "Are you sure?" "Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, with the cold region's bug path and the power of pollution, it can't be wrong. Other than the filth race, no other race can do such a thing." Lu Ye's expression became serious. If it was the filth race, then things would be troublesome. The filth race. In the starry sky, it was a race that made almost all races tremble in fear. This race had once almost unified the entire starry sky and enslaved all races in the starry sky. Lu Yi knew this because he had read some records in the dwarf race's Rest Abyss Pavilion. However, those records were very vague. Because it was so long ago, even the dwarf race did not know the inside story. However, there was no doubt that the filth race was an extremely powerful and evil race. Lu Yi had never imagined that a remote place like the Jade Conch Galaxy would one day face such a crisis. End of chapter. Chapter 1704. There were all kinds of races in the cosmos, including those without or with low intelligence. There were at least 8,000 of them. Among the myriad races in the cosmos, there were two races that were the most notorious. One was the insect race, and the other was the blood race. The insect race loved to invade realms and devour their resources to develop themselves. Thus, wherever the insect race went, all life would be exterminated. The blood race did not do much worse. Any living being in a realm they targeted would become their blood slaves, their lives at their mercy. Thus, the insect race and the blood race were not in a good situation. They were basically hated by everyone. The blood race had the ability to disguise themselves as humans, so their situation was slightly better. The insect race, on the other hand, could not. Even if they took human form, the insect race's characteristics were extremely obvious and easy to distinguish. In addition to these two major races, there was actually another race that was despised by the myriad races. That was the filth race. However, unlike the insect race and the blood race, not everyone knew about the filth race. This was because they rarely showed themselves, but when they did, they would bring about a devastating disaster. Take the Jade Conch for example. Even now, they had not figured out what the enemy was. The root of all this was the filth race's concealment. The blood race had 5 top-grade realms, each formed by a part of the blood progenitor's body. Although the locations of these realms were not fixed, there were still traces to follow. The insect race was in a similar situation. Several top-grade insect nests were under the surveillance of the starry sky powerhouses and could not be easily moved. If not for the fact that the blood race and the insect race had many powerhouses, which made it difficult for the various races to reach a consensus, the insect race would have long since been annihilated. However, no one knew where the filth race's foundation was. They would often use the insect path to suddenly appear, destroy a star system, and then disappear without a trace, leaving behind only a cruel and chaotic scene. Rumor had it that the filth race's foundation was called the Filth Earth. It was a massive realm and one of the top-grade realms in the cosmos. However, this was only a rumor, and no one could verify it. Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi's voice transmission didn't escape the ears of the Yu Yao and Jade Conch. Han Dong couldn't help but turn to look at them. Junior brother Lu, you are very knowledgeable. Do you know something? Right now, the first thing Yu Conch had to figure out was what race the enemy was and what they wanted to do. Only then could they come up with a suitable response. If they didn't even know the most basic information, they would definitely be at a disadvantage if they fought. Lu Yi said, I'm not too sure, but Ma Shangxi told me that the ones coming from the insect path should be the filth race. Filthy race? Yu Luo, Yu Yao, and even Wu Zhuo were confused. They had never heard of it before. Lu Yi turned to look at Ma Shangxi. Tell me in detail. Ma Shangxi then told her everything she knew about the filth tribe. Han Dong felt that Lu Yi had been in the myriad phenomenon sea for many years and was very knowledgeable. However, Ma Shangxi was still the most knowledgeable among all the Yu Yao present. She was the strongest and had lived the longest. She had once disguised herself as a human and stayed in the myriad phenomenon sea for many years. In terms of knowledge, she was far more knowledgeable than Lu Yi. After hearing about the filth race, Cho Wu's expression turned solemn. How can fellow Taoist Ma determine that the ones coming this time are the filth race? Ma Shangxi said, it's very simple. Their method of invasion is basically the same as what I've heard. They are using a frigid insect path. It is said that the filth race has a starry sky supreme treasure called the Heavenly Frost Mirror. With this treasure, the filth race can release heavenly frost chi at a random location in the starry sky. It should be the frigid realm you saw before. This heavenly frost chi isn't too harmful and is even useful for the cultivation of some cultivators. However, it has another greatest use, which is to freeze space and then shatter it, artificially creating an insect path that can be used to travel back and forth. A starry sky supreme treasure. The heavenly frost mirror. Yu Luo and the other Yu Yao were shocked. Even though they were born in a remote area, they had heard of starry sky supreme treasures. These were treasures that were born when the starry sky was born. There were only a few of them in the entire starry sky. Lu Yi, on the other hand, was concerned about something else. Although he didn't have a starry sky supreme treasure, he had come into contact with a few, so his reaction wasn't as great as Yu Luo's Yu Yao. Random? In other words, the filth race can't determine where the heavenly frost chi will be released? That's what they said. Ma Shangxi nodded. Motherf asterisk cur. Wu Zhuo couldn't help but curse. Why are we so unlucky? Yu Luo and the other Yu Yao also felt extremely unlucky. The starry sky was so vast, so how could the heavenly frost chi appear in Yu Luo galaxy? Yu Luo was in a remote area. It wasn't easy for Lu Ye to appear and open up a path to the myriad phenomenon sea. Just as the good days were about to arrive, something like this happened. Cho Wu's expression was solemn. If it's as fellow Taoist Ma said, then isn't the filth race incredibly powerful? Ri Zhao, there should be quite a few of them, right? Ma Shangxi nodded. The filth race naturally has a lot of experts. Ri Zhao will definitely be there, and his numbers won't be small. However, Sector Lord doesn't need to worry about Ri Zhao attacking. From what I know, the Heavenly Frost Mirror's insect path is different from the real insect path. It has a certain tolerance limit, so Ri Zhao can't directly attack through the insect path. Han Dong muttered, the insect path is like a water pipe. Ri Zhao is bigger than the water pipe, so he can't pass through? If he forced his way through, he might burst the water pipe? Something like that? Ma Shangxi nodded. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, slightly relieved. Because with the Jade Conch Eye's power, if Ri Zhao really attacked, there was no need for them to resist. All they had to do was wash their necks and reach out. Even so, the situation wasn't optimistic. Even if Ri Zhao couldn't pass through, Yi Yao definitely could. Moreover, the filth race was such a large race. Even if there weren't many Yu Yao, as long as 30 to 50 of them came, the Jade Conch Galaxy wouldn't be able to stop them. As if seeing everyone's worry, Ma Shangxi said, the situation shouldn't be that pessimistic. The filth race is a race that conquers everywhere, so the Jade Conch Galaxy is definitely not the only battlefield they opened with the help of the Heavenly Frost Mirror. Hearing this, Lu Ye's eyes lit up. In other words, even if the other party is really from the filth race, we only need to face a small portion of the filth race's power? That's right. Now that the insect path has been opened, there's only one way to protect the galaxy. Kill all the enemies and make the filth race retreat, Ma Shangxi said. Although that was what he said, Ma Shangxi knew that it was too difficult to do this with the Jade Conch Eye's power. He secretly made up his mind that if the situation was bad, he would take the Lord away from here. He couldn't let the Lord die here. Next, Ma Shangxi shared some information he knew about the filth race. The more they knew about the filth race, the more they realized how difficult the situation would be. During the journey, there was a steady stream of news from the cold region. The situation was not optimistic. It had only been a few days, but the cold region was about to fall. It was not that the Jade Conch cultivators were not fighting hard enough. Although they did not know the details of the filth race, they could see that if the cold region could not be defended, the Jade Conch cultivators would be destroyed soon. Therefore, they were almost doing their best. However, the enemies were not afraid of death, and the filth power in their bodies would dissipate after death. Now that the cold region was filled with the filth power, there was only one insect path for the enemies to pass through. As long as the Jade Conch cultivators guarded the exit of the insect path, they would have the geographical advantage. However, the situation was reversed now. If the Jade Conch cultivators wanted to kill the enemies, they had to risk being eroded by the filth power. The current situation was that the Jade Conch cultivators could not kill the enemies, but they could not kill them either. They were tied up. This was the most difficult thing about the filth race. They did not care about death because the people who died were not their own cultivators. Moreover, the initial death was just to pave the way for the final conquest. Based on the news from the cold region, the enemies killed by the Jade Conch cultivators were not the filth race at all, but the cultivators of various races enslaved by the filth race. The filth race hid in the shadows all year round and launched wars with the help of the heavenly frost mirror. Countless galaxies were destroyed. Not all the living beings in those galaxies were killed. Many of them were infected by the filth power and became slaves for the filth race to launch new wars. Therefore, there was only one thing the Jade Conch cultivators could do now, and that was to do their best to dispel or purify the filth power in the cold region. The effect was not great because those who had this kind of power were basically medical cultivators, and medical cultivators were the least in number among the various sections. The star boat Lu Yi was on was already rushing toward the cold region at its fastest speed, but even so, it would still take a few days to arrive. 2 days later, new news came from the battlefield. After the filth race had gathered a certain number of people in the cold region, no new enemies appeared. Instead, they were setting up something. As time passed, the Jade Conch cultivators felt that the insect path in the cold region was stabilizing. The insect path was created by the heavenly frost mirror's cold energy freezing and shattering space. It was not the same as a normal insect path, so it was not stable at first, and its size was limited. This was also the reason why Rizhao could not directly kill his way over. If he forced his way through, there was a risk that the insect path would collapse. Once the insect path collapsed, the living beings who passed through would not have a good ending. But now, with the filth race's various arrangements, the insect path was stabilizing. This was a very bad sign because if the insect path was stable enough, would Rizhao of the filth race be able to kill his way over? If that was the case, the Jade Conch cultivators would be completely finished. When the news came, everyone turned to look at Ma Shangxi, who shook her head and said, "That's all I know about the filth race. I don't know anything else, but according to the information we received, everything the enemy is doing is very likely to lure Rizhao over." The group of Yu Yao felt their scalps go numb. Chou Wu could not help but urge, "Faster, faster." End of this chapter. Chapter 1705. The two Jade Conches and Yu Yaos in charge of steering the star ship madly circulated their magic power, but even so, the star ship's speed had already reached its limit. Chou Wu had no choice but to send a message to the Jade Conches cultivators, ordering them to stop the Filth Tribe at all costs. They couldn't let the Filth Tribe set up their trap. He knew that once the Filth Tribe succeeded and Rizhao showed up, the Jade Conches would never be able to make a comeback. Although the current situation was dire, the Jade Conches could at least fight. However, the feedback they received made Chou Wu despair. Although Rizhao hadn't shown up on the Filth Tribe's side, more than a dozen Yu Yaos had already appeared. Coupled with the fact that the frigid zone was filled with the power of filth, the Jade Conches cultivators couldn't do anything. If they forced their way in, they might even die. Faced with such a situation, the Jade Conches cultivators could only watch helplessly. The next day, the frigid zone came into sight. On the star ship, Lu Yi looked ahead and saw a vast expanse of gray fog shrouding the starry sky. That should be the original location of the frigid zone. Lu Yi had never seen such a thing before. Even looking at it from afar, the gray fog gave off an extremely foul feeling, as if it was formed from the filth of the world. It made people involuntarily feel disgusted and disgusted. Under the cover of the power of filth, the situation inside couldn't be seen clearly. However, they could still vaguely see many figures moving about. Lu Yi also sensed the aura of the insect path from the center of the gray fog. When they arrived, the Yu Yaos who were originally stationed here came forward to greet them. Their cultivation bases varied. There were early to late-stage Yu Yaos, but without exception, their faces were ashen and their auras were weak. On the surface, they didn't seem injured, but they looked like they had consumed too many spirit pills, causing pill toxins to accumulate in their bodies and impeding the flow of their power. The Yu Yaos naturally wouldn't make such a low-level mistake. Therefore, it wasn't pill toxins that were affecting the flow of their magic power, but the strange power of filth. When they met, Chou Wu asked anxiously, "What's the situation now?" The middle-aged man who was the leader wiped his face. They didn't take the initiative to attack. They've been guarding the insect path all this while. I don't know what they're doing, but we've failed to break in. Instead, we've lost some people. The insect path is stabilizing. If what you said is true, then once the insect path stabilizes completely, Rizhao will definitely arrive. How strong are they? Chou asked again. The middle-aged man said, they're not particularly strong, but they're not weak either. They're at a normal level. If it's one-on-one, I'm not afraid of them. But in that environment filled with filthy energy, it's hard for us to perform. Another pale-faced woman nodded and said, that's right. Once you enter that place, not only do you have to fight with the enemy, you also have to constantly circulate your magic power to resist the corrosion of the power of filth. If you're not careful, your magic power will be polluted, and it will be very troublesome to disperse it. Under normal circumstances, even if some pill toxins had accumulated in Yu Yao's body, it wouldn't be troublesome to deal with them. However, the filthy energy that invaded their bodies was different from pill toxins. It was much more difficult to deal with and expel. Looking at the current situation, the Yu Yao of the filth race had the advantage in numbers and the geographical advantage, but they were clearly well-versed in the art of conquest. Even though they had the advantage, they didn't take the initiative to attack, only guarding the insect path and busily making arrangements. They clearly wanted Rizhao to come and settle the situation with a single battle. We can't let them continue. Chou shook his head, his eyes filled with determination. Under such circumstances, Yu Kong was at her wit's end and could only fight. Otherwise, the longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for Yu Kong. While the Yu Yao were talking, Lu Yi was looking at the original location of the frigid domain. Using his perception, he could sense a dozen or so Yu Yao's auras inside. On the other hand, there were also a dozen or so people on their side, but in terms of numbers, they were slightly inferior to the enemy. Junior brother Lu, Hall Master Wu, I'll need your help in this battle. Chou Wu turned to look at Lu Yi and Wu Zhuo. Wu Zhuo immediately said, no problem. Since we're here, I won't just stand by and watch. Lu Yi nodded and said, just give us the order, Realm Lord. Both he and Wu Zhuo understood that if the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold. Although the evil here was close to the Yu Kong domain, if Yu Kong was defeated, the 9 states and Qingli Dao world would not have a good ending. Protecting the Yu Kong domain was protecting the 9 states and Qingli Dao world. After receiving the two's response, Chou Wu calmed down. Lu Yi was in the early stage of the Yu Yao, so he didn't have much hope. However, Wu Zhuo was in the middle stage and could be of great help. Moreover, Lu Ye's servant, Ma Shangxi, was in the peak stage of the Yu Yao. They would definitely be of great help. Chou Wu was only glad that Lu Yi and Wu Zhuo had remained in the Yu Kong domain. Otherwise, with the Yu Kong domain's strength alone, there might not be any hope. There were still many Yu Kong constellations rushing over, but they would not make it in time. Chou Wu didn't hesitate and immediately started to deploy. In fact, there wasn't much to deploy. The strength of both sides was obvious. What he needed to do now was to quickly get rid of the enemy's Yu Yao, then find a way to destroy the enemy's arrangements and stop the enemy's sunlight from descending. Just as Ma Shangxi had said before, if they wanted to protect the Yu Kong domain, they had to get rid of the filth race in front of them and make them retreat. It would be best if they could make them voluntarily close the insect path. Otherwise, if the insect path was here, it would be like having a fierce tiger under their bed. The star system's future would not be stable. The number of Yu Yao was about the same, so they had to target them separately. Under Chou Wu's arrangements, each of the enemy's Yu Yao was targeted. However, although the number of Yu Yao was about the same, the enemy's number was greater. Therefore, they had to fight with numbers. The situation wasn't optimistic, but since things had come to this, they could only brace themselves. No matter who it was, no one was optimistic about the outcome of this battle. Lu Yi looked at the middle-aged man who had spoken before and suddenly said, "Senior brother, may I ask how much strength you can use now?" The middle-aged man sighed, 80 to 90%. Lu Yi nodded, "Senior brother, don't move. Let me see if I can dispel the filthy power." Saying so, he raised his hand and patted the middle-aged man's shoulder. The middle-aged man was startled. "Junior brother Lu, you're also a medical cultivator?" It wasn't that the filthy power couldn't be dispelled or purified, it was just very troublesome. Moreover, Those who had such means were usually medical cultivators. Lu Yi looked like a weapon cultivator at first glance, so the middle-aged man couldn't help but be a little puzzled. You can say that. Lu Yi didn't explain too much. Saying so, he urged his spiritual power and the power of the talent tree. As his spiritual power circulated, it began to flow through the middle-aged man's body. The next moment, the middle-aged man's expression froze, revealing a look of disbelief. This was because he felt that as Lu Ye's spiritual power circulated, the filthy power in his body was rapidly dissolving. The situation was like a snowflake exposed to the scorching sun. He was well aware of how tenacious the impure energy was. Based on his own abilities, he could easily expel it in half a year of seclusion. However, the method Lu Yi was using had the miraculous effect of curing the disease. It was truly shocking. Lu Yi wasn't surprised by the middle-aged man's reaction. The talent tree could burn away the curse power that was deeply embedded in the merpeople's bloodline. No matter how difficult this filthy power was to deal with, it couldn't be more powerful than the merpeople's curse. How could the talent tree remain after being burned away? Back then, when Lu Yi helped the merpeople burn away the curse power, he had to be very careful because the curse was a bloodline inheritance. To completely burn it away required a lot of effort, and it also caused considerable damage to the merpeople's physical bodies. But now, it wasn't so troublesome. The flow of spiritual power did cause some damage to the middle-aged man's physical body, but with his Yu Yao foundation, he could recover in the blink of an eye. At most, he would feel some burning pain. Compared to the power to burn away the filthy power, this little bit of pain was nothing. After a short while, Lu Yi withdrew his hand. The middle-aged man stared at Lu Yi in a daze, not knowing what to say. After a long while, he finally said, "Junior brother's method is simply amazing." Cho Wu's eyes lit up. "You've dealt with the filthy power?" "It's done." The middle-aged man nodded. He sensed the condition of his body. There's nothing left. The other Yu Yao who had been corroded by the filthy power also looked at Lu Yi with bright eyes. A great battle was imminent. Even the slightest bit of power could be the key to their survival. "Junior brother Lu, please lend us a hand. We can't thank you enough," someone immediately said. Since Lu Yi had taken action, he naturally wouldn't just save one of them. He immediately helped them burn away the filthy power one by one. Without the filthy power, the Yu Yao felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Cho Wu thought for a moment before saying, "Junior brother Lu, it's best if you don't participate in this battle." Since Lu Yi could so easily deal with the filthy power, he was far more important than participating in this battle. Moreover, he was only an early Yu Yao. If he participated in this battle, he would undoubtedly be in more danger than the others. Cho Wu was afraid that something would happen to him. Lu Yi said, "It's all right. We have fewer people than the other side to begin with. Without me, the pressure on the others will increase. I'll just be careful." Cho Wu thought for a moment and felt that Lu Yi was right. He warned, "You must be careful. If anything goes wrong, immediately flee the battlefield. Your life is your top priority." Lu Yi nodded. "Let's do it," Cho Wu said softly as he looked at the area shrouded in gray fog. In the next instant, as orders were passed down, the Jade Conch constellations began to move, including 2 battleships. The Jade Conch constellations were now divided into 2 groups. One of them had been here for a long time and had fought several battles with the Yu Yao. The other group was still on their way here and would probably take another 10 days to half a month to reach the battlefield. These 2 battleships had been driven here by the Jade Conch constellations and were stationed here. The battle now began with the rumbling of the 2 battleships. Chapter 1706. The warships buzzed as violent attacks rained down on the area where the gray fog was. In an instant, many auras were annihilated. Although the Filth tribe was not afraid of death and had even used a large number of deaths to gain the geographical advantage, things were different now. Now that the Filth tribe was busy stabilizing the insect path, they naturally did not want to be disturbed by the Jade Conch tribe. The gray fog immediately counterattacked. The cultivators under the Yu Yao from both sides fought in the air. This kind of battle was extremely advantageous for the Jade Conch cultivators because they could fight while fleeing. However, it was very disadvantageous for the Filth tribe. Although the area covered by the gray fog was not small, there was still a limit. The space for them to move was limited. This restriction caused the Filth tribe's casualties to soar. In just a short incense stick's worth of time since the battle began, there were nearly 1,000 auras in the gray fog. Even so, the Filth tribe's Yuyao did not move. They did not seem to care about the deaths of their own cultivators and were still busy making arrangements. As a large number of Filth tribes' death and filth force spread, the gray fog seemed to expand. This was the fundamental reason why the Jade Conch tribe's cultivators were able to take down the insect path despite having the geographical advantage. The more Filth tribe they killed, the larger the area covered by the gray fog and the denser the Filth tribe's power became. As they fought, the Jade Conch tribe's cultivators were forced to retreat. "It's about time." Cho Wu watched quietly and said softly. The Filth tribe had not sent any reinforcements because there was no movement at the insect path. However, it did not mean that the Filth tribe would never send reinforcements if the situation continued like this. With the insect path here, it was very easy for the Filth tribe to send reinforcements. Therefore, from the beginning, Cho Wu did not plan to use this method to determine the outcome. The battle between the Yuyao was the key. As long as they could win on the Yuyao's level and kill all the Yuyao, the rest could be slaughtered. Attack! With Cho Wu's order, the Yuyao on his side moved together and charged toward the area covered by the gray fog. Everyone had their own goal. This was all arranged in advance. If this were in the past, the Yuyao of Jade Conch might have had their hands tied because they had experienced firsthand how difficult it was to deal with the foul energy. However, now that Lu Yi had used a technique that could swiftly disperse the foul energy, they no longer had any worries. Furthermore, they knew that if they lost this battle, only destruction would await Jade Conch City. As such, the Yuyao of Jade Conch City didn't hold back at all. They frantically circulated their magic power and locked onto their targets with boundless killing intent. Cho Wu arranged for Lu Yi to be at the early Moon Jade stage, which was undoubtedly based on his cultivation. At that time, Li did not express any opinions. So what if it was the early Moon Jade stage? It was a good opportunity to see what the filthy race was like. "Milord, you must be careful." Ma Shangxi's voice sounded beside his ear. Compared to Yu Conch, he was undoubtedly more concerned about Lu Ye's safety. Lu Yi nodded and charged into the gray fog. He sensed it carefully and quickly realized that the foul energy within the gray mist was somewhat similar to the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was extremely corrosive, but its corrosive strength was far inferior to the water of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the 10,000 Elephant Sea, even the sun-radiant realm cultivators couldn't resist the corrosion of the seawater. Although the foul energy within the gray mist was very corrosive, it wasn't to that extent. At the very least, Lu Yi could sense that if he circulated his magic power to protect himself, he could resist it. The only price he would have to pay was that his magic power consumption would be higher than usual. If he could resist it here, then the other Yuyao should be able to do the same. In other words, if there were no external disturbances, then a Yuyao with sufficient magic power wouldn't be corroded by the foul energy even if she stayed here for a long time. However, if a battle broke out, then it would be impossible. During a great battle, a cultivator's protective magic power could not be maintained at all times. During a fierce battle, if there was even the slightest obstruction in the flow of magic power, then the foul energy would immediately invade their bodies. The Yuyao of Jade Conch City had most likely encountered such a situation. Thus, when fighting against the filthy race in this kind of environment, no race would be able to gain an advantage. This was because they would have to divert a portion of their magic power to protect themselves. Lu Yi only needed to use his senses for a moment to discern the various characteristics of the gray mist. The auras of many living beings in front of him approached him, their cultivation levels uneven. Most of them were star mansions, and Lu Yi even sensed the auras of divine ocean cultivators. Under normal circumstances, divine ocean cultivators couldn't leave the realm and traverse the starry sky with their physical bodies. This was because if their physique wasn't up to par, they wouldn't be able to resist the omnipresent starry sky energy. Only star mansions had the qualifications to do so. However, there were exceptions to everything. On the insect race's side, not to mention divine ocean cultivators, even true lake insect race cultivators had the ability to move through the starry sky. They relied on the special carapace specially bred by their hives. This special carapace could resist the starry sky energy and prevent the insect race from dying. On the blood race's side, there was the blood sea. Cultivators with higher cultivation levels could bring cultivators with lower cultivation levels across the starry sky. The situation on the filthy race's side was clear at a glance. The foul energy in the gray mist had undoubtedly created a suitable space for these divine ocean filthy race cultivators to move about. Within this area, there was no starry sky energy at all, so the divine ocean filthy race cultivators were naturally unaffected. However, whether it was divine ocean cultivators or star mansions, they were nothing in front of the current Lu Yi. He didn't even have the desire to draw his saber. He raised his hand and launched a series of fire-type spell techniques. He hadn't done this for a long time. With the talent tree, his attainments in the Tao of spell techniques were not low. Flames soared into the sky and illuminated the starry sky. Lu Ye's figure did not stop as he slaughtered his way out. In front of him, Yu Yao of the filthy race, who had been locked onto by his divine sense, roared and brazenly charged forward. Her magic power fluctuated wildly, and her aura was extremely ferocious. It was only then that Lu Yi realized what kind of person his opponent was. It was actually a star beast. He had learned a lot about the filthy race from Ma Shangxi, so Lu Yi could tell at a glance that his opponent was not a filthy race cultivator, but a slave enslaved by the filthy race. The filthy race was different from other races. It was a race, but it was actually a general term. This was because this race was all-inclusive. Any living being of any race could become a filthy race. The only condition was that they could maintain their own consciousness after being infected by the foul energy. The foul energy was extremely invasive. Most living beings would lose their rationality after being infected, leaving only their instincts. These living beings were slaves to the filthy race. However, there were also a small number of living beings who could maintain their rationality. Such living beings, no matter what race they were before, would become a filthy race cultivator. The star beast in front of Lu Yi was obviously just a slave. Sensing Lu Ye's malice, it charged forward without restraint. Lu Yi had expected this. There must be a real filthy race cultivator among the dozen or so Yu Yao here. Otherwise, a group of mindless slaves would not be able to do anything. It was just that before the battle began, no one could tell which was a real filthy race cultivator and which was a slave. When it got closer, Lu Yi could see what the star beast looked like. It was a rotten meatball with green water all over its body. It reminded Lu Yi of the corpse race. That was what the corpse race looked like. The rotten meatball-like star beast was the size of a house. Its limbs were extremely short, and its claws were almost negligible. Only its 2 legs were thick and sturdy, and its head was pitifully small. Its entire body was extremely disproportionate. Lu Yi had never seen such a star beast before. However, there were many types of star beasts, so Lu Yi was not surprised. There was nothing to say. He directly blasted out a violent spell technique. In an instant, flames soared into the sky and enveloped the star beast. With a furious roar, the star beast's huge body was forced back again and again. It could not even get close to Lu Yi. Although Lu Yi was a weapon cultivator, his magic power was extremely pure. The power of his spell techniques could not be underestimated. He was confident that he could easily deal with such an enemy. The continuous collision of spells caused the star beast's body to begin to break apart. Green juice splattered everywhere. Just as Lu Yi was about to take it down in one go, the star beast roared again from within the flames. Immediately after, hundreds of green lights suddenly bloomed. The green lights were dazzling, and Lu Ye's vision was instantly filled with green. At the same time, he felt his spirit sea being attacked. However, soon after, 7-colored multicolored light blossomed. After receiving the impact, the divine sea that was surging with waves calmed down. When Lu Yi looked again, he could clearly see what the green lights that had attacked his spirit sea were. They were actually emerald eyes. There were hundreds of them on the star beast's round body. At this moment, they were all open and constantly emitting green light. It was an extremely strange sight. This was clearly the star beast's method. Moreover, it had the effect of attacking the spirit. If it were not for the rainbow divine lotus, Lu Yi might have suffered a small loss. Of course, it was impossible for the star beast to use this method to kill him. Although Lu Yi had just become a Yu Yao, the toughness of his spirit was incomparable to that of an ordinary Yu Yao. The star beast could not get close to Lu Yi. The divine might released by the hundreds of eyes was also ineffective. If it were a normal star beast, it would have definitely turned around and fled. However, this star beast had long since lost its consciousness. It was only under the control of the filth tribe. It had no intention of fleeing at all. It continued to charge toward Lu Yi. Another fire dragon roared and rushed out. It tore through the star beast's chest and burrowed into its flesh. Then it exploded. Immediately after, numerous spell techniques were unleashed. After 3 breaths, the star beast's rotting body completely disintegrated. Yu Yao had died. Yu Yao was slightly startled by the commotion. Everyone hurriedly released their divine sense to investigate the situation. They were all on edge, afraid that they would discover something unfavorable to their side. However, to their surprise, Lu Ye's battle had already ended. How long had it been? They had only just charged over and clashed with their enemy. Yet, Lu Yi had already dealt with his opponent? Wasn't this speed a little too fast? End of chapter 1. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.